happy. In the past, Qingzhou, even in October, would not be so cold. The cold wind seemed to penetrate into the bones, making people extremely uncomfortable. The adults in your family are really something. Chinda shook his head and said, "Why don't you buy some cotton cloth to make clothes? These linen clothes are so cold that they won't keep you warm." Chen Si and Chen Jiang felt particularly annoyed when they saw Chunda wearing cotton clothes. Chunda said this lightly, but how expensive is cotton? The money for 1 bolt of cotton cloth could be used to buy 3 bolts of linen, or even 4 or 5 bolts. Besides Chun Dao and Chunda, who in Qinjiao village was willing to spend that kind of money. Being able to buy linen to make a new set of clothes was already quite good. Sheng Yi, Chun Jiang, who had complained about Chunda in his heart, looked at Qin Sheng and asked curiously, "Aren't you cold?" Qin Sheng's clothes were not much better than Chen Jiang and Chen Si's, and were even worse, and they were also very thin. However, Chen Sheng's behavior was completely different from the two shivering people. In this cold weather, Chen Sheng didn't even shiver. "It's not cold." Chen Sheng shook his head and said, "I used to think the weather was cold, but since I became a warrior, I no longer feel cold." Chen Si and Chen Jiang couldn't help but feel envious. For a moment, they didn't know whether they envied Chen Sheng's identity as a warrior or his physique that was not afraid of the cold. Squeak! At this time, the door of Chun Dao's house opened. After seeing the few people waiting outside, he hurriedly called out, "Come in quickly, it's cold outside." Soon, everyone came to the living room of Chun Dao's house and sat down. At the same time, Li Ping also came over with steamed buns and egg drop soup for breakfast. "Everyone, have some soup to warm yourself up." "Thank you, Auntie." Chen Jiang picked up the egg drop soup and took a sip. The warm egg drop soup went down his throat and into his stomach, making Chen Jiang feel that the coldness in his body was dispelled a lot. Others also took action, eating steamed buns with egg drop soup, looking very comfortable. At the same time, the villagers who were working in the front yard also arrived one after another. After hurriedly eating breakfast, they started to work separately. The women went to the fields to take care of the wheat, while the men built a chicken farm on a construction site near Chen Dao's home. After having a full breakfast, Chen Dao and his group walked out of the house, got on the village chief's donkey cart, and drove to the county town. Just as Chen Dao and others were heading to the county town, a large number of Xiaohe villagers were gathering beside the farmland in Xiaohe village. After some inquiries over this period of time, the villagers of Xiaohe village have learned about the situation in Qinjiao village. It is indeed, as Zhao Kong said, that they live a prosperous life eating white flour buns every meal. Thus, a wonderful scene appeared in Xiaohe village. The villagers of Xiaohe village, who have nothing to do every day, no longer stay at home to avoid the cold wind. Instead, they appear on the edge of the village's farmland, huddling together to keep each other warm while looking at the farmland of Chunjiao village from afar. A middle-aged man named Lao Jiang looked at the busy women of Chunjiao village in the distance, with a hint of envy in his eyes. As a farmer, he also wanted to work in the fields like the villagers of Chunjiao village, because although working in the fields was tiring, at least he could grow food and feed his family. It's a pity the awful weather doesn't give him any chance to work in the fields. Village head, old Jiang looked at Li Chang at the front of the crowd and asked, "Why can crops be grown in the fields of Qinjiao village?" As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's eyes immediately turned to Li Chang. They were also very curious about this question. It was now a consensus among the people of Qingzhou that no crops could grow in the fields. Therefore, they could not understand how the wheat in Qinjiao village was grown. "I don't know either." Li Chang stroked his shiny bald head and said, "I only heard that it was a special type of wheat found in the vast mountains. It can withstand severe cold and grow in cold weather." "Is there such a magical wheat seed? Qinjiao village is so lucky. How come we can't find this kind of grain? Should we try our luck in the mountains? Maybe we can find some miraculous grains like this too." Many villagers were eager to try. They knew the dangers of Kangmang Mountain, but they had no other choice. If they couldn't grow food in the fields, they would starve to death sooner or later. Instead of waiting to starve to death, it is better to try your luck in the vast mountains. Maybe you can find crops that can grow in cold weather like in Qinjiao village. Don't ever think that way. Seeing everyone getting ready to make a move, Li Chang quickly said, "There are countless wild beasts and dangers in the vast mountains. Once you enter the mountains, your life or death will be in your hands." After saying that, Li Chang added, "Besides, we may not be able to find food seeds, even if we enter the mountains. There is no need to take the risk." After hearing what Li Chong said, everyone immediately gave up the idea of going into the mountains. Xiao village was also a village built next to Kangmang Mountain. They were very aware of how dangerous it was in the depths of Kangmang Mountain. Not to mention whether grain seeds could be found in the mountains. The danger of entering the mountains alone was enough to make everyone afraid. Of course, this is also because although most villagers are poor, they're not to the point where they have no food at home, so they do not have the urge to take risks. Life in Qinjia village is so good. Lao Jiang couldn't help but sigh. He said that he had just been to Qinjia village a few days ago and saw with his own eyes the villagers of Qinjia village queuing up to get steamed buns. Those white and plump steamed buns almost made Lao Jiang want to rob them. Fortunately, he suppressed this idea in time. Otherwise, he might not be able to leave Qinjia village. That's right. I just went to Qinjia village yesterday, and they eat really well. They can eat white flour buns every meal. I saw a man eat 5 buns by himself. 5 is not enough. When I went to Qinjia village, I took a special look at Zhao Kang's son-in-law, Chun Chung. I saw him eat 15 steamed buns by himself. 15 steamed buns? Damn it, how can Chun Chung eat so much? That's right, Chun Chung is a big, strong man, a full head taller than our village chief, and he eats a lot. I even heard that Chun Chung works as a bodyguard for Chun Dao at his home. Not only does he have 2 steamed buns a day to fill his stomach, but he also gets to drink egg drop soup and eat some meat occasionally. Chapter 182, it's really amazing. As they chatted, the topic inevitably turned to Chun Chung. There was no other way. Their initial understanding of Chunjia village started from Chun Chung, the son-in-law of Xiao village. Therefore, when many people go to Chunjia village, the first thing they often inquire about is Chun Cheng's news. When talking about Chun Chung, everyone can't help but think of Zhao Kong, who is about to marry his daughter to Chun Chung. Then old Zhao has really found a good son-in-law. A middle-aged woman couldn't help but sigh. Chun Chung is so tall and strong, you can tell at a glance that he's a hard-working man. He also receives 2 taels of silver every month from Chun Dao's family. I'm afraid that after old Zhao's daughter marries him, she will become a wealthy lady. That's right, Chun Cheng's family is so rich. If Zhao Kang's daughter marries him, she will definitely live a good life. It's a pity that it wasn't my daughter who married Chun Chung. The daughter of the village chief's sister will definitely not do badly if she marries him. Yes, even though Chun Mu is not as good as Chun Chung, he is still a villager of Qinjia village. Eating white flour buns every day is not a problem. The feeling of envy spread among the crowd. During this period, whenever the villagers of Xiao village talked about Zhao Kong, they couldn't help but feel envious. There was no way. The husband Zhao Kang's daughter married was too good, and it was hard not to envy him. Have you heard? Zhao Kang's family killed a chicken a few days ago. My house is close to his, and I could smell the meat all night long. It was so delicious that I couldn't sleep the whole night. Killing a chicken to eat? Zhao Kong is so willing to do that. How can I not be willing to do that? He's marrying off 2 daughters at once, and the betrothal gifts alone are 4 chickens. Killing one to eat is nothing. Damn it, Zhao Kong is really into it. He's living like a god. Fuhu Boxing Gym. Su Jiwen and Li Hu sat opposite each other at the stone table, sipping tea while looking at Li Ying, who was practicing the tiger-subduing fist in the open space. During this period of time, the relationship between Su Jiwen and Li Hu became increasingly close. When he had nothing to do in the county government office, Su Jiwen always liked to come to the Fuhu Boxing Gym to sit and chat with Li Hu. Xiaoying should already be an 8th rank warrior, right? Su Jiwen asked while looking at Li Ying, who was practicing boxing. Good. Li Hu couldn't help but smile. Originally, in his imagination, it would take Li Ying at least 3 months to become an 8th grade warrior. However, with the help of the blood-feathered chicken, Li Ying made rapid progress. He was promoted to the 8th grade a week ago and has now stabilized at the 8th grade level. This blood-feathered chicken is truly magical. Su Jiwen couldn't help but think of Chun Dao's slightly handsome, yet slightly immature face. During this period, Li Ying was not the only one who made rapid progress. Zhang He, Su Jiwen's subordinate, was also promoted to a 9th grade warrior. There's only one reason why the 2 of them made rapid progress, and that is the blood-feather chicken provided by Chun Dao. Without the blood-feather chicken, Li Ying would never have been able to be promoted to the 8th rank so quickly, and Zhang He would never have been able to become a warrior so quickly. When he thought of blood-feather chicken, Su Jiwen couldn't help but think of last night's dinner. Su Jiwen had just returned home from a busy day at the county government office last night when his wife, Mrs. Wu, brought him a bowl of chicken soup. "My dear," she said, "this is the yellow-feathered chicken I bought at the East Market today. It's incredibly plump and delicious, and it's a very nourishing soup. Try it now." Yellow-feathered chicken? At that time, Su Jiwen was stunned for a moment and looked down at the chicken soup in the casserole. Only then did he realize that this chicken was very different from the chickens he had seen before. Not only was there more fat in the chicken soup, but the chicken skin was also golden in color, which was very different from the gray-feathered chickens he usually saw. "Madam, where does this yellow-feathered chicken come from?" Su Jiwen couldn't help but ask. "I don't know either." Wu shook her head and continued, "But I heard from the farmer selling chickens that these chickens were caught from the vast mountains. I saw that the chickens had golden feathers and looked so pleasing, so I spent 1.5 taels of silver to buy 2. Farmer's son, captured in the vast mountains." Hearing this, Su Jiwen couldn't help but think of Chun Dao's face. Chun Dao was also from a farming family, and the blood-feather chickens he sold were also said to be caught from the vast mountains. Of course, Su Jiwen, who had personally visited Chunjiao village, actually knew very well that he didn't know whether the blood-feather chicken was caught in the vast mountains, but it was certain that Chun Dao's family raised a large number of blood-feather chickens. Not only the blood-feathered chicken, but even the yellow-feathered chicken in front of him was most likely raised by Chun Dao's family. Because the last time he was at Chun Dao's house, Su Jiwen saw that there were many chickens with golden feathers in Chun Dao's backyard, which were much larger than gray-feathered chickens. Su Jiwen was almost certain that the so-called yellow-feathered chicken that his wife Wu bought in the East Market was sold by Chun Dao. "Lady," Su Jiwen took a sip of the chicken soup and found it to be incredibly delicious, with a subtle aroma of fat. It tasted much better than the soup made with gray-feathered chickens. "Why is this chicken so expensive?" Nowadays, a gray-feathered chicken costs only about 200 coins on a market, but a yellow-feathered chicken sells for 750 coins. This is obviously not normal. Of course, Su Jiwen did not mean to blame Wu for spending money recklessly. Although he was not a corrupt official, his family was not short of 700 coins. He was just asking subconsciously. The farmer said that it was very difficult for them to catch the yellow-feathered chicken, and the yellow-feathered chicken's feathers are golden in color, symbolizing wealth, so they sell it at a higher price. Wu replied, "Not easy to capture." Su Jiwen didn't believe this at all. With just a quick glance, he knew that there were at least hundreds of yellow-feathered chickens in Chun Dao's house. The saying that they were difficult to catch was just an excuse to drive up the price. Of course, Su Jiwen didn't say this, but continued to ask, "What does that farmer look like?" "Looks," Wu recalled for a moment and said, "They looked too ordinary. I don't remember them clearly. That's definitely not Chun Dao." Su Jiwen thought to himself that although Chun Dao had a dark complexion, he had a handsome face and could easily attract the attention of women. If the person selling chickens was Chun Dao, Mrs. Wu would definitely have an impression of him. But, although the one selling the chickens was not Chun Dao, he definitely had some relationship with Chun Dao. After all, in the entire Taiping County, apart from Chun Dao, no one else could come up with such a unique breed of chicken. "Madam, how is this chicken selling in the East Market?" "They're selling very well. When I bought the chickens, there were only a few left at the farmer's stall." "Is that so?" Su Jiwen drank the chicken soup in one gulp, looking thoughtful. Yellow-feathered chickens are so expensive yet so popular, which shows that there are still many wealthy families in the city. Septecent vuitanta-tres li hongries expectations. Just as Su Jiwen was lost in his memories, Li Hu suddenly spoke up. "Brother Su, there seem to be more refugees outside the city now. Why is that?" Hearing this, Su Jiwen sighed and said, "Things are getting more and more chaotic in Liangzhou." After saying this, Su Jiwen continued, "I've learned from the government reports that Liangshan Commandery in Liangzhou has been completely occupied by Yangzheng. The entire Liangshan Commandery is ablaze with war. With no way out, the people are naturally fleeing to Qingzhou." "That's not right." Li Hu frowned and said, "I remember you, Brother Su, once said that Yangzheng was a hero who only killed corrupt officials and local tyrants, and never harmed the common people. Why can't the common people survive?" "Then Yangzheng is indeed a hero." Su Jiwen nodded and said, "But what about his subordinates? His generals and soldiers can't do the same as he does, without harming the people. Liangshan County is so vast that Yangzheng himself can't take care of it all, not to mention Su Jiwen paused, then continued. Although Yang Zheng sympathizes with the people, he doesn't know how to govern a place. Furthermore, the cold weather has had a far greater impact on Liangzhou than Qingzhou. Crops can't be grown in the entire Liangzhou, so the people of Liangzhou will naturally head to Qingzhou to seek a living. Because of Yang Zheng's killing of officials and gentry, very few scholars joined him. Without scholars, Yang Zheng was unable to govern the area and could only let his illiterate soldiers take charge. As for the ability of the soldiers to govern the place, one can imagine that the entire Liangshan County is now in a state of anarchy. Of course, if it were just a state of anarchy, the people would be able to survive and maybe even live better. After all, many people were forced to live without it by the court. What really made it impossible for the people to survive was the terrible cold disaster. The land of Liangzhou was already bitterly cold, and it became even colder after the cold disaster. The people who lacked food and clothing would only starve to death or freeze to death if they stayed in Liangzhou, so they naturally had to go to the nearest Qingzhou to find a way to survive. Is the situation in Liangzhou so dire? Li Hu was stunned and said, even if the land can't grow food, the wealthy families in Qingzhou should have stored grain, right? Yang Zheng slaughtered so many officials and gentry, but he couldn't find any grain. Actually, even the wealthy families in Qingzhou might not have that much grain in their reserves. Su Jiwen said, the cold weather has been going on for several years now. 4 years now, Liangzhou has experienced a total crop failure in the autumn and winter, and even the crops planted in the spring and summer have suffered significant losses. Under these circumstances, Brother Li, do you think the wealthy families in Liangzhou can store much grain? Li Hu fell silent. Even for wealthy families, food could not be obtained out of thin air, but had to be grown on the land. The environment in Liangzhou was so harsh that wealthy families naturally lost their source of food. At this point, Li Hu finally understood why there were more and more refugees outside the city. This was because Liangzhou was suffering from both war and cold, and the people had long been unable to survive. In fact, Yang Zheng and his gang of rebels are not the only ones in Liangzhou. Su Jiwen continued. Yang Zheng is only the one causing the most noise. The other rebels may not be as powerful as Yang Zheng, but their impact is significant. Moreover, these rebels have absolutely no discipline. Every time they capture a city, they plunder it, even the last rations left in the homes of the poor. Isn't the phrase, soldiers pass like a comb, used to describe the army in feudal society? Even the quality of the Xia dynasty's army was not worth mentioning, not to mention the rebellious refugee armies, which were even more harmful to the people than those bandits and thieves. And then there's Minnesota, Su Jiwen added. Mingzhou, one of the 3 northern prefectures along with Liangzhou, is also rife with rebels and chaos. How is Yuzhou? Li Hu asked subconsciously. Yuzhou is also one of the 3 northern states, bordering Mingzhou, Liangzhou, and Jingzhou. Yuzhou is all right. Su Jiwen thought for a moment and said, because of the Great Wall Army, only small rebellions have occurred in Yuzhou. They will be suppressed quickly and will not become a major issue. The Great Wall Army, as the name suggests, is an army guarding the Great Wall and responsible for resisting the barbarians outside the Great Wall. This army is the most powerful army in the entire Xia Kingdom, no doubt about it. Because the entire northern border of Yuzhou borders the grasslands, the Great Wall Army is mainly responsible for guarding the northern part of Yuzhou. With the existence of the Great Wall Army, Yuzhou is destined to be in a state of peace. After all, the commander-in-chief of the Great Wall Army, General Wang Pingman, was a man of great military achievements and was far beyond the reach of the rebels formed by those refugees. This world, Li Hu sighed lightly, feeling extremely fortunate to be in Qingzhou. If he had lived in the 3 northern states, he would have had a very difficult time living in peace. Even in Yuzhou, although the rebels could not cause any trouble, the lives of the people would not be much better than those in Liangzhou and Mingzhou. Su Jiwen also sighed. In this world, chaos has been spreading and no one knows when it will end. Brother Chun, just as the two were sighing in their hearts, Li Ying's voice was heard. They immediately came to their senses and looked towards the door. But then a young man walked in. Looking at his handsome appearance, who else could it be but Chun Dao? Behind Chun Dao followed Chun Cheng, who was as strong as a calf, holding several chicken cages in his hands. Young friend Chun is here. Li Hu immediately stepped forward enthusiastically and asked with great anticipation, What kind of chicken did you bring this time, Mr. Chun? Ever since Chun Dao mentioned last time that there would be a new breed of chicken, Li Hu had been looking forward to it, because after entering the 7th level, Li Hu's martial arts practice had almost stagnated. His martial arts talent wasn't particularly strong, and if he wanted to continue improving after reaching the 7th rank, he needed external help. The medicinal herbs used by 7th rank warriors. It is almost impossible to buy it in Taiping County, so Li Hu placed all his hopes on Chun Dao, hoping that Chun Dao could bring a new, better chicken breed that could be effective for 7th grade warriors. This time we brought blood feather chicken. Chun Dao smiled and replied, in addition to the blood feather chicken, there is also a new breed of chicken. A new breed of chicken? Li Hu's eyes lit up, and his gaze fell on the chicken coop that Chun Chun was holding. He saw that in addition to the blood feather chicken, there was also a kind of chicken with red feathers. Even its claws and beak were red. It was the red-blooded chicken that Chun Daoxin had bred. This chicken is named red blood chicken. Chun Dao, noticing Li Hu's gaze, explained, the chicken blood and meat of this chicken are more helpful to warriors than the blood-feathered chicken. It also has an excellent effect on nourishing the chi and blood of 7th grade warriors. Before coming, Chun Dao had already tried out the effects of the red blood chicken, so his tone was very confident at this time. Chapter 184, Shocking Words. Effective on the 7th rank. As soon as Chun Dao finished speaking, not only Li Hu's eyes lit up, but even Su Jiwen fixed his eyes on the chicken coop that Chun Chun was holding. Like Li Hu, he was a 7th grade warrior and had also encountered the problem of being unable to make progress. Therefore, when he heard Chun Dao say that the red-blooded chicken was effective for 7th grade warriors, he couldn't help but feel a little excited. Mr. Chun, please take a seat. Li Hu enthusiastically pulled Chun Dao to sit at the stone table. After pouring tea for Chun Dao, he couldn't wait to ask, Mr. Chun, how much is this red-blooded chicken? Upon hearing this, Chun Dao pondered for a moment and said, Master Li should also know that medicinal herbs that are effective on 7th grade warriors are extremely precious. It is also very difficult to capture a chicken breed like the red blood chicken that is effective on 7th grade warriors, so the price is inevitably higher. Having said this, Chun Dao paused for a moment, then quoted his desired price. This red-blooded chicken, 100 taels of silver each. 100 taels? Li Hu and Su Jiwen frowned at the same time. 100 taels of silver was not a small amount. Few ordinary people could even come up with 1 tael of silver. 100 taels of silver was probably something that even some small landlords could not afford. However, the two also knew that things used by warriors were never cheap. A portion of medicinal materials used by a 9th grade warrior would cost at least 20 taels of silver, and medicinal materials used by an 8th grade warrior would start at 40 taels of silver. As for the medicinal herbs used by 7th grade warriors, that was something that could not be bought even with money in Taiping County. So when Chun Dao quoted the price, the two did not directly refute it. Instead, after thinking for a moment, Li Hu asked, Mr. Chun, 100 taels of silver is too expensive. Can you give me a discount? I'm afraid that won't work. Chun Dao shook his head firmly. This red-blooded chicken was caught by people from our village who risked their lives to enter Kangmang Mountain. It was not easy to obtain. If I sell it too cheaply, I would be sorry to the villagers who risked their lives to enter the mountain. I don't believe you. Su Jiwen, who had personally been to Chunjia village, rolled his eyes wildly. What about risking one's life to go into the mountains was complete nonsense. Su Jiwen estimated that this red-blooded chicken was most likely bred in the backyard of Chun Dao's house. The saying that it was hard-earned was completely an excuse for Chun Dao to raise the price. All right. Seeing Chun Dao's firm attitude and unwillingness to lower the price, Li Hu sighed in disappointment and said, How many red-blooded chickens did you bring this time, Mr. Chun? If the number is not large, I will buy them all. Although 100 taels of silver was a bit expensive, Li Hu, who was in urgent need of improvement, could no longer care about that. Besides, not to mention whether the medicinal herbs used by 7th grade warriors can be bought. Even if they can be bought, they probably won't be cheaper than the red-blooded chicken. It may even be much more expensive. I brought 10 chickens in total. Chun Dao replied. Among them, there are 5 blood-feather chickens and 5 red-blood chickens. Master Li, would you like to buy them all? 5 blood-feathered chickens. That's 100 taels, plus 5 red-blooded chickens, a total of 600 taels. Li Hu calculated silently in his mind, and then said, Of course I have to buy them all. After saying that, Li Hu turned to Li Ying and said, "Yingzi, go get 600 taels of silver." Good. Not long after, Li Ying returned with a purse. After handing the purse to Chen Dao, the father and daughter happily took the chicken coop from Chen Cheng. Although Li Hu bargained just now and seemed to think that the red-blooded chicken was very expensive, in fact, Li Hu knew very well that he would not lose money if he bought these 10 chickens with 600 taels of silver. Selling one blood-feathered chicken to Cui Mang would earn him 30 taels, and 5 would earn him 150 taels. As for the red-blooded chicken, although Li Hu did not intend to sell it, he knew that the value of this chicken that could be effective against a 7th-grade warrior would definitely not be less than 100 taels. In other words, if Li Hu buys these chickens with 600 taels of silver, he will only make money and not lose money. Yingzi, put the chicken away properly. Li Hu gave Li Ying some instructions, then sat down at the table and kept pouring tea for Chen Dao. At this time, Chen Dao looked at Su Jiwen and asked tentatively, "County Magistrate Su, when I entered the city just now, I saw that there seemed to be more refugees outside the city." "Indeed," Su Jiwen nodded and said, "the situation in the north is getting worse and worse. More and more people are fleeing to our Taiping County because they can no longer survive." Chen Dao nodded and continued, "How does County Magistrate Su plan to deal with those refugees outside the city? Does he really intend to leave them to fend for themselves?" Well, Su Jiwen couldn't help but sigh. Whenever he talked about this, he felt a headache. As an official with a high moral bottom line, he couldn't bear to see those refugees starving and freezing to death outside the city. But he really had no other choice. Most of the grain and property he had obtained from the Zhu family had already been transported to the county capital as additional taxes. The remaining small amount of grain, it was only enough to occasionally provide some porridge outside the city, but it was far from enough to resettle the refugees. "There's nothing I can do," Su Jiwen said helplessly. Looking at the helpless expression on Su Jiwen's face that didn't seem fake, Chen Dao's eyes flashed with a glint, and he said tentatively, "Why don't you ask a wealthy family in the city to lend you some money?" Borrow. Su Jiwen's He also wanted to borrow grain from the wealthy families in the city. A long time ago, Su Jiwen had approached the Yuan, Fang, and Zhu families in the city, as well as the 3 major martial arts schools, trying to get them to pay some money and grain to cope with the tax increase. However, those wealthy families simply didn't give him, a county magistrate, any face. It was because of this incident that Su Jiwen decided to eradicate the Zhu family. When I say borrow, I don't mean borrow with my mouth, but with my knife. Chen Dao said meaningfully, "Hasn't the county magistrate previously used a knife to borrow money and grain from the Zhu family? Why not do it again now? With a knife?" Su Jiwen and Li Hu were shocked by Chen Dao's words. It is hard to imagine that such shocking words came from the mouth of a young man from Qinjia village. Use a knife to borrow food. This sounds so horrifying. Of course, if he could really borrow a knife, Su Jiwen wouldn't mind. He had no good feelings towards big families like the Yuan family in Taiping County, but Su Jiwen shook his head and said, "Young friend Chen, you're overthinking it. The wealthy families in Taiping County aren't easy to deal with. Take the Yuan family, for example. They have at least 3 7th-grade warriors, and no fewer than 10 8th and 9th-grade warriors. Although I have some martial arts skills, I can't do anything to the Yuan family." In fact, Su Jiwen had thought about eradicating the Yuan family and the Fang family more than once. These 2 families were local tyrants in Taiping County. As long as they existed, it would be difficult for Su Jiwen to completely control the entire Taiping County. Chapter 185, Not Ordinary. What a pity. The Yuan family and the Fang family are not so easy to deal with. The 2 families are very powerful. There are at least 2 to 3 7th-grade warriors guarding their homes, and the number of 8th-grade and 9th-grade warriors is also extremely large. With the power controlled by Su Jiwen, it is not enough to deal with these 2 families. Otherwise, Su Jiwen would not have deliberately chosen the weakest Zhu family to eliminate, and not touch the richer Yuan family and Fang family. "I naturally know that the Yuan family is powerful," Chen Dao said noncommittally, "but the county lord, together with Master Li and me, may be able to deal with the Yuan family." As soon as these words were spoken, Li Hu, Su Jiwen, and Li Ying all looked at Chen Dao in surprise, as if they had not expected him to say such a thing. In the eyes of the 3, Chen Dao was just a young man from Qinjia village. He shouldn't have any grudges against the Yuan family. Why did he seem so determined to deal with the Yuan family? Why does Chen Xiaoyuan want to deal with the Yuan family? Su Jiwen had already heard that he was not the only one who wanted to eliminate the Yuan family. Chen Dao also had the idea of getting rid of the Yuan family. Because I have some problems with the Zhu family. Chen Dao said succinctly, although I am not talented, if the county magistrate wants to deal with the Yuan family, I am willing to help. Su Jiwen looked at Chen Dao deeply and was a little confused as to why a farmer from Qinjiao village would have a feud with the Yuan family, a giant in Taiping County. He was even more confused as to where Chen Dao got the confidence to deal with the Yuan family. Not enough. At this time, Li Hu shook his head and said, I know that you are already a warrior, but warriors are divided into levels. The Yuan family has at least 3 7th-grade warriors. Brother Su and I together only have 2 7th-grade warriors. It is far from enough to deal with the Yuan family. Li Hu could tell from his appearance that Chen Dao had become a warrior, but he didn't know that Chen Dao was already a 7th-rank warrior. Therefore, when calculating the combat power against the Yuan family, Li Hu did not take Chen Dao into account. Yeah. Chen Dao had no intention of explaining, but instead said to Li Hu, Master Li, why don't you exchange a few moves with this pet of mine? Li Hu was stunned for a moment, then looked at Xiaoyuan on Chen Dao's shoulder. This cat-like animal had made him feel dangerous several times. To be honest, Li Hu also wanted to know the fighting ability of this animal. So, Li Hu nodded and said, Come on then. After saying that, Li Hu stood up and walked to the open space on the side. Chen Dao said to Xiaoyuan, Go, Xiaoyuan, don't hurt anyone. Xiaoyuan shouted, indicating that she understood, and then jumped off Chen Dao's shoulder, turning into a shadow in everyone's sight. Zolfast. Su Jiwen narrowed his eyes slightly, his heart beating fast. The animal that Chen Dao called Xiaoyuan seemed to be as fast as a ghost. Even he, a 7th-grade warrior, could not catch Xiaoyuan's figure. Su Jiwen couldn't help but think. If Chen Dao suddenly ordered the kitten to attack when he and Li Hu were completely unprepared, he and Li Hu might not be able to react in time. Where did you go? Li Hu opened his eyes as wide as he could, trying to catch sight of Xiaoyuan, but he soon realized that his efforts were in vain. Because Xiaoyuan was running too fast, the speed at which he could move his eyes could not keep up with Xiaoyuan's speed. The only way to determine where Xiaoyuan was the airflow caused by her running. Realizing this, Li Hu immediately became alert and carefully felt the fluctuations in the air. But at this moment, a crisp cry exploded in Li Hu's ears like thunder. Li Hu, almost completely relying on instinct, punched to the left. Oh my! Xiaoyuan, who suddenly appeared on Li Hu's left, cried out softly, twisted her body flexibly to avoid Li Hu's fist attack, and then disappeared from Li Hu's sight again. What a fast speed and what a flexible body. Su Jiwen muttered to himself. To be fair, if he was in Xiaoyuan's position just now, he would probably have to take Li Hu's punch head-on, but Xiaoyuan was able to avoid Li Hu's fist in just a moment, which shows how flexible his body is. Oh my! In the open space in the backyard, Xiaoyuan's figure flashed from time to time, and she frequently attacked Li Hu. Although she could not hurt Li Hu, she made Li Hu feel exhausted. His eyes could not catch Xiaoyuan's figure at all, and he could only judge Xiaoyuan's position through the flow of air. This made him defend himself blindly and unable to attack Xiaoyuan at all. He felt exhausted. At this moment, another crisp cry exploded in Li Hu's ears. Li Hu froze all over and looked down, only to see that Xiaoyuan had appeared on his shoulder at some point, with its sharp claws hanging at his throat, ready to give him a fatal blow at any time. Father actually lost? Li Ying stared blankly at his father, whose throat was held by Xiaoyuan, with a dull expression. Li Ying could be said to be the person who knew the most about how strong Li Hu was. When Li Hu was still an 8th-rank warrior, he was the strongest among the 3 major martial arts schools in Taiping County. After becoming a 7th-rank warrior, Li Hu could be considered the strongest person in Taiping County. However, Li Hu, one of the strongest warriors in Taiping County, couldn't even defeat a seemingly harmless kitten. This made Li Ying wonder, is this little cat called Xiaoyuan by Chen Dao a big beast in cat skin? But even a big tiger is no match for my father. This cat. Su Jiwen also stared blankly at Xiaoyuan, who was pressing his claws against Li Hu's throat. To be honest, when Li Hu said that this kitten was dangerous, he didn't take it too seriously, because in his opinion, an animal of such a small size, even if it was powerful, would not be that powerful. Until now, Su Jiwen finally understood that the small size and cute appearance of his kitten did not mean that it was harmless to humans and animals. On the contrary, due to its small size, it was faster and more flexible. Even a 7th-rank warrior could not detect its strange movements and could not attack it. Madoka, come back! Chen Dao smiled and waved to Xiao Yuan. Xiao Yuan immediately retracted its claws, jumped up from Li Hu's shoulder, landed on Chen Dao's shoulder, rested its chin on Chen Dao's shoulder, and resumed its harmless appearance, as if the person who had just defeated Li Hu was not at all. Call! The moment Xiao Yuan retracted its claws, Li Hu subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. At that moment, he was really afraid that Xiao Yuan would cut his neck. Fortunately, Xiao Yuan did not kill him because he had received Chen Dao's instructions in advance. Friend Chen. Li Hu returned to the table and sat down, his face filled with shock as he said, "Your pet is truly extraordinary." Chapter 186, Extremely Complex. Li Hu looked at the cute little panda on Chen Dao's shoulder in shock, with mixed feelings in his heart. He had noticed something unusual about Madoka long ago, and knew she wasn't as harmless as she appeared. However, he never expected that even after reaching the rank of 7th-grade warrior, he would still be powerless against Madoka. You know, a 7th-rank warrior is already the pinnacle of martial power in Taiping County, yet he can't even defeat a kitten. This made Li Hu feel like he had practiced martial arts to the point of being useless. "I won't hide it from you, either." Chen Dao gently stroked Xiao Yuan's head and said with a smile. Xiao Yuan was found by chance in the Kangmang Mountains. His fighting power is comparable to that of a 6th-grade warrior. Li Hu, Su Jiwen, and Li Ying looked at each other, and they could see each other's pupils trembling. What is the concept of a 6th-grade warrior? In the entire Taiping County, the strongest warrior is a 7th-grade warrior. As for the 6th grade, there is not a single one. But Chen Dao told them that this cute and harmless-looking kitten was equivalent to a 6th-rank warrior. How could the three of them not be shocked? Of course, it's also possible that Chen Dao exaggerated Xiao Yuan's strength, but the three felt that this possibility was unlikely. First of all, Chen Dao had no reason to lie to them, and secondly, they had all witnessed the fight between Xiao Yuan and Li Hu with their own eyes. The fighting power displayed by Xiao Yuan was indeed far superior to that of the 7th-rank Li Hu. As for whether he really had the fighting power of a 6th-rank warrior, the three of them were unable to judge. Because even Su Jiwen, who has the highest status here, has never seen a warrior above the 6th rank take action. How? After casually describing Xiao Yuan's strength, Chen Dao looked at Su Jiwen with a sharp gaze. Does County Magistrate Su have the confidence to deal with the Yuan family now? Hearing this, Su Jiwen frowned at first. Then his brows relaxed, and he laughed out loud. Since you are determined to deal with the Yuan family, I will naturally lend you a helping hand. Eradicating the Yuan family has always been something Su Jiwen wanted to do, but could not do. Now, with the addition of Chen Dao, his own strength has greatly increased, so naturally he has to take action. Master Li, what about you? Chen Dao looked at Li Hu again. Li Hu thought about it and nodded. Since Chen Xiaoyu and Brother Su have made their decision, I will join. Li Hu also had no good feelings towards the Yuan family, so of course he didn't mind joining Chen Dao's actions. After all, the Yuan family is very rich. After eliminating the Yuan family, the benefits that Li Hu will gain will definitely not be small. Just like the last time he eliminated the Zhu family, Li Hu made a fortune. But Li Hu hesitated for a moment and then asked, after we eliminate the Yuan family, how will the benefits be distributed? Although Li Hu didn't mind working together to deal with the Yuan family, he was an adult, and adults often focused on interests when doing things. Li Hu would not do things that would make him work for nothing, but get no benefits. I want the Yuan family's food. Su Jiwen was the first to say what he wanted from the Yuan family. As the head of the county, food has always been the biggest problem on Su Jiwen's shoulders. Without enough food, he cannot stabilize the county or the refugees outside the city, and chaos may break out in Taiping County at any time. Food is fine. Chen Dao agreed without hesitation. Food was not in short supply for either him or Qinjia village. Moreover, cold-resistant wheat had already grown, so food was no longer a problem that bothered him. Therefore, Chen Dao agreed to Su Jiwen's request without hesitation. Then, Chen Dao looked at Li Hu and asked, Master Li, what about you? Li Hu thought for a moment and said, I want the Yuan family's medicinal herbs. The Yuan family is very similar to the Zhu family that was destroyed before. The main industries of the family are grain and medicinal materials. The grain had been taken away by Su Jiwen in advance, so Li Hu naturally set his sights on the Yuan family's medicinal materials. Can. Chen Dao also agreed. Except for the food and medicinal herbs, all other property of the Yuan family belongs to me. What do you think? No problem. Li Hu and Su Jiwen answered readily. They had already taken the most valuable food and medicinal materials of the Yuan family, so they naturally would not think about asking for other things. After all, in this operation, Chen Dao was the one who contributed the most. Then it's settled. Chen Dao then discussed with the two the specific details of how to deal with the Yuan family. After discussing for about a quarter of an hour, Chen Dao stood up and said, "That's it. I'll go do the first thing first." After saying that, Chen Dao led Chen Sheng out of the Fuhu boxing gym. Li Hu stared at Chen Dao's back until he completely disappeared from his sight. Then he sighed, "Young Master Chen is truly a vindictive person." Li Hu thought of countless reasons why Chen Dao wanted to deal with the Yuan family, including the deaths of relatives and friends by the Yuan family, the occupation of land by the Yuan family, and so on. But Li Hu never thought that the reason why Chen Dao wanted to deal with the Yuan family was so simple. When the three of them were discussing just now, Chen Dao also stated the reason why he wanted to deal with the Yuan family, and this reason made Li Hu feel particularly absurd. Because Chen Dao's reason for going after the Yuan family was simply that the owner of the Yuan family's pharmacy wanted to steal his property. It is no exaggeration to say that in Taiping County, there are no less than 1,000 people whose land and property have been seized by the Yuan family, but no one dares to deal with the Yuan family. Chen Dao is the only one. The Yuan family has provoked someone they shouldn't have. Su Jiwen stroked his beard and said with a smile, "In Taiping County, the Yuan family has been dominating the country for a long time, not to mention the direct descendants of the Yuan family. Even the members of the side branches, and even the servants of the Yuan family are extremely powerful when bullying the people. In the past, the oppressed people would have been helpless and could only speak out, but this time, the owner of Yuan's drugstore had obviously hit a wall. Chen Dao was not one of those powerless people who dared not speak out when being bullied. Instead, he was a piece of iron plate that was enough to make the Yuan family suffer heavy losses." Yes, Li Hu and Li Ying both nodded. Chen Dao was accompanied by a pet that was no less powerful than a 6th-rank warrior. If the Yuan family provoked such a person, they would have no choice but to wait for death. Friend Chen has already gone ahead. It's time for us to make some preparations. Outside the Fuhu boxing gym, Chen Dao came up to Chunda and the others and said to Chunda, who was standing in the front, "Uncle, Chengger and I have other things to do later. You and the others should find a hotel to stay for the night." As he spoke, Chen Dao took out 5 taels of silver and placed it in Chen Dao's hand. "This is the money for the hotel. Find a better hotel. Become." Chunda didn't act pretentiously and directly accepted the silver. He immediately said, "Brother Dao, you must be careful when you go out to do things." Chapter 187, Sudden Rage. "Don't worry, Uncle." Chen Dao, Chunda, and others waved their hands, and then walked away with Chen Cheng. Outside the Fuhu boxing gym, Chen Jiang looked at Chen Dao's departing figure and couldn't help but sigh. Brother Dao is so generous. Chen Jiang saw with his own eyes that Chen Dao handed 5 taels of silver to Chunda and told Chunda to find a better hotel. In other words, these 5 taels of silver were for food, drink, and accommodation for these people. This is 5 taels of silver. An ordinary hotel room in Taiping County costs only a few hundred coins for 1 day, and a slightly better one costs only 1 tael of silver at most. But Chen Dao gave a full 5 taels. It's enough for everyone to stay in the best hotels and eat the best meals. Uncle Chen. Chen Si looked at Chunda with shining eyes and said, "Can we have some fun in the city now?" Chen Si had long wanted to have some fun in the county town, but he never had the time every time he went to the city. Of course, the bigger problem was that he had no money. Now with the 5 taels of silver given by Chen Dao, he can have a good time in the city. Chunda thought for a moment and said, "Let's find a hotel to stay in first, and then use the remaining money to go out and have fun." Chunda had no intention of saving money for Chen Dao. He understood Chen Dao and knew that since Chen Dao had given him the 5 taels of silver, he would not care where the 5 taels of silver went. Therefore, it would not be a big problem to use the money to have a good time in the city. Alas, Chen Si and Chen Jiang cheered their eyes shining with passion. Great! I want to go listen to storytelling. I want to eat the food in the city hotel. The two of them talked about what they wanted to do next and looked for a hotel with Chunda. At the same time, Chundao, who had left the Fuhu boxing gym, appeared outside Yuan's pharmacy with Chincheng. Standing in front of the drugstore, Chundao glanced at the Yuan's drugstore signboard above the door for a moment, then walked into the drugstore. The drugstore was still deserted, with no customers, only the shopkeeper and a drugstore clerk. Chundao walked straight to the counter after entering the pharmacy. He stared at the shopkeeper in front of him and said, "Shopkeeper, do you still recognize me?" The shopkeeper Yuan Hua raised his head. Due to his old age, his vision was a little blurry. After rubbing his eyes and seeing Chun Dao's appearance clearly, he was suddenly shocked. He was very familiar with Chun Dao's face because he regarded this man as a fat sheep. Some time ago, he contacted Qin Jiang of the Black Tiger Gang, thinking of slaughtering this fat sheep. But for some reason, after Qin Jiang went there, he disappeared and there was no news of him since then. Yuan Hua even suspected that the damn Qin Jiang wanted to take all the benefits for himself and run away after grabbing the fat sheep. But soon, Yuan Hua rejected this idea. He had worked with Qin Jiang many times and knew that although Qin Jiang was a fool, he would not be blinded by such a small amount of benefits. After rejecting this idea, the Yuan family became even more confused. Qin Jiang led dozens of Black Tiger Gang experts to rob, so there shouldn't be any accidents, right? Yuan Hua, who was puzzled, had been thinking about this matter for a while, so he had always had a deep impression of Chun Dao. At this moment, when Chun Dao suddenly appeared, he couldn't help feeling guilty. However, Yuan Hua had lived for most of his life, and his ability to manage facial expressions was very strong. Although he felt guilty, he remained calm and said, "Some of these guests look familiar, but I'm old and I can't remember them for the time being." "Yeah." Chun Dao leaned forward so that Yuan Jia could see him more clearly. "Take a closer look. Do you recognize me?" Yuan Hua gave Chun Dao a fake look and shook his head, saying, "Sorry, sir. I really can't remember." "Oh." Chun Dao nodded calmly, and then, suddenly attack. Chun Dao suddenly stretched out his hand, spread his fingers, and grabbed Yuan Hua's neck, pressing his head hard against the counter. "Now, what? Do you recognize him? What are you going to do?" The clerk in the drugstore was immediately frightened and screamed subconsciously. As for Yuan Hua, the moment Chun Dao smashed his head on the counter, his whole mind was stunned. As a member of the Yuan clan, although Yuan Hua was a marginal figure within the Yuan clan, he was from the Yuan clan after all, and was considered a respectable person in Taiping County. Even the government officials had to be polite to him, not to mention the ordinary people. Anyone who knew his identity, Yuan Hua, had to treat him with respect. But at this moment, someone roughly pressed his head on the counter, which made Yuan Hua completely helpless. When had he, Yuan Hua, ever been treated like this? "Now, do you recognize who I am?" Chun Dao repeated what he had just said, without even looking at the shop assistant, and with his right hand, he firmly pressed Yuan Hua against the counter, making it impossible for Yuan Hua to move his head at all. At this moment, Yuan Hua finally came to his senses. Feeling ashamed, he said with a ferocious look in his eyes, "Damn peasant, how dare you do this to me?" Although Yuan Hua was a marginal figure in the Yuan family, he always considered himself a child of an aristocratic family. As for young men like Chun Dao, who were obviously not from the city, he naturally regarded them as peasants. Let go of the shopkeeper. On the other side, the clerk from the drugstore rushed over quickly, wanting to rescue Yuan Hua, but before he could get close, Chincheng reached out and grabbed him, not giving him any chance to get close to Chun Dao. Mutlegetman. Chun Dao seemed to have completely ignored the waiter's actions. He used his right hand to push Yuan Hua's head down again, and said with a smile, "What a peasant." At this time, Chun Dao suddenly remembered the young man in brocade clothes whom he had met at the door of the East Market grain store before. Yuan Hua was just the owner of the Yuan family's drugstore, but his arrogant and contemptuous attitude towards the common people was no less than that young man in brocade clothes. "Let me go." The veins on Yuan Hua's neck bulged, and he tried his best to break free from Chun Dao's fingers, but it was completely futile. Even a strong middle-aged man could not compete with Chun Dao in terms of strength, let alone an elderly man like Yuan Hua. "Qin Jiang, remember?" Chun Dao looked down at Yuan Hua, who was pinned to the ground, and asked. "Let me go." Yuan Hua twisted his body and threatened. "I am for the Yuan family and a member of the Yuan clan. If you dare to hurt me, the Yuan family will never let you go. Oh, Chun Dao said indifferently. It seems you are unwilling to cooperate. As soon as he finished speaking, Chun Dao exerted force with his right hand, suddenly lifted Yuan Hua's head up, and then smashed it down hard. Chapter 188, Returning the Jade to Zhao. Bang! Yuan Hua's head made close contact with the countertop. I have to say that this pharmacy is worthy of being owned by the Yuan family. Even an inconspicuous item, like the counter, is made of extremely solid materials. After being hit so hard, only some cracks appeared. On the other hand, Yuan Hua's head was instantly broken and bleeding. Strands of blood oozed from his forehead, dyeing his hair red, making Yuan Hua's head look like a juicy watermelon. Yuan Hua's cry of pain came late. Although he had only been injured very few times in his life, he felt the pain was excruciating. His old body burst out with tremendous strength, and his limbs and belt twisted wildly, hoping to break free from Chun Dao's hands. But this is obviously impossible. Chun Dao, who has been promoted to a 7th grade warrior, has an arm strength of 1,000 pounds. With Yuan Hua's old body, how can he break free from his hands? Now, can you answer my question? Chun Dao asked again. Yuan Hua, however, seemed not to hear. He struggled to break free and shouted angrily. Just wait, you little bastard. The Yuan family will never let you go. Your entire family will be killed. No, all the men in your family will die. As for the women, I will sell them to brothels and let them die in humiliation. Death is imminent, and one still does not know it. Chun Dao shook his head. He wondered if Yuan Hua had lost his mind. Even in this situation, he still wanted to use the Yuan family to threaten him. Did he really think that the Yuan family was the emperor? But Chun Dao thought about it and felt relieved. In Taiping County, the Yuan family is really no different from a local tyrant. The people of the entire Taiping County are extremely afraid of the Yuan family. Even the county magistrate can't do anything to the Yuan family. In this situation, Yuan Hua would naturally have blind confidence in the strength of the Yuan family, and would subconsciously think that as long as he brought up the name of the Yuan family, he could scare away the enemy. It's a pity. His enemy this time is Chun Dao. Others are afraid of the Yuan family, but Chun Dao is not. Seeing that Yuan Hua was unwilling to cooperate in answering questions, Chun Dao also lost his patience. He used his arms to lift Yuan Hua's head high, and then pressed it down hard. Boom! This time, Chun Dao used 50% of his strength, and Yuan Hua's head slammed heavily on the counter like a piece of iron weighing hundreds of pounds, instantly smashing the solid counter into 2 pieces. As for Yuan Hua's head, as expected, it exploded instantly, splattering red and white everywhere, staining the counter and the ground red. Murder! The drugstore clerk who was being held down by Chun Cheng's pupils shrank, his legs went limp, and he almost collapsed to the ground. Chun Dao, who had crushed Yuan Hua's head, looked at this person. After thinking for a moment, he said to Chun Cheng, "Brother Cheng, let's go." "Okay, Brother Dao." Chun Cheng nodded, frowned at the clerk who was so frightened that his whole body was as limp as noodles, and said, "Brother Dao, do you want this clerk?" Chun Cheng made a gesture of wiping his neck. Although he was honest and straightforward, he also knew the principle of killing to silence someone. He thought it was natural that he should kill this guy as well. No. Chun Dao shook his head. He still needed someone to go and inform Yuan Hua. If he killed his men, there would be no one to help him report the news. All right. Chun Cheng threw the clerk aside and followed Chun Dao out of Yuan's pharmacy. Shopkeeper. After the 2 men left, the guy crawled to the headless body of Yuan Hua, his face full of horror. As a clerk in a grain store, he had never imagined he would experience something like this. The store was running smoothly when 2 people inexplicably walked in. Before they could even say a few words, one of them grabbed the shopkeeper's head, asking if he knew him, and then smashed his head into pieces. The clerk in the grain store, who had never encountered such a thing, stared at Yuan Hua's headless body in a daze, and was at a loss for a moment. Fortunately, after a while, the guy finally came to his senses. This matter must be reported to the Yuan family. Thinking of this, the clerk quickly stood up, rushed out of the pharmacy, and ran towards the Yuan family. In the huge house of the Yuan family, Yuan Ju, the head of the Yuan family, held a cup of fragrant tea in his left hand and the tea lid in his right hand, skimming off the foam from the tea soup from time to time. Opposite Yuan Ju sat his most proud son, Yuan Yong. If Chun Dao, Chun Jiang and others were here, they would probably be familiar with Yuan Yong. He was none other than the young man in brocade clothes whom they had met outside the grain store in the East Market. Yuan Yong is the eldest son of Yuan Zhu and his wife. He has extraordinary talent in martial arts and is now a peak 8th grade warrior. He will soon be able to break through to the 7th grade realm and become one of the top warriors in Taiping County. Yuan Zhu was extremely satisfied with his eldest son. Of course, there are also some things about Yuan Yong that he was not satisfied with. And that was, this guy is too lustful, and the direction of his lust is quite strange. Most men tend to have a special liking for young and beautiful virgins. Yuan Yong was completely different. He liked women, and he liked married women. Yuan Yong would not even look at women without husbands. He only targeted women with husbands. Because of this, Yuan Yong had caused countless troubles. Fortunately, the Yuan family still has some power in Taiping County, and the people whose wives were kidnapped did not dare to come to the Yuan family to cause trouble. However, not causing trouble doesn't mean that the people won't hold a grudge against them. Although the Yuan family doesn't care about the hatred of those peasants, they still want to maintain their reputation. Therefore, Yuan Zhu was still very dissatisfied with Yuan Yong's frequent behavior of forcibly seizing women. Yuan Zhu took a sip of tea and asked, "Have you returned the woman you snatched back last night?" "Don't worry, father. I have returned the jade intact." A lewd smile appeared on Yuan Yong's lips. The taste of that woman was truly indescribable. Of course, the most interesting thing was the expression on the woman's husband's face when he sent her back. Every time after abducting a woman and enjoying a night with her, Yuan Yong would personally send her back just to see the wonderful look on the woman's husband's face. Whenever he saw the anger in the woman's husband's eyes that seemed to want to cut him into pieces, Yuan Yong would feel particularly comfortable. Yuan Zhu, noticing Yuan Yong's expression, suddenly darkened his face and said, "Yonger, you're already an adult, and it's time for you to start a family. You shouldn't continue to be so unrestrained." Upon hearing this, Yuan Yong remained non-committal and said, "Father, please rest assured. I have already dealt with that woman and her family. No word will get out, and it will not affect the reputation of our Yuan family." "That's good." Yuan Yonu did. He actually didn't mind Yuan Yong's preference for women. He was just afraid that the news of him forcibly abducting women would affect the reputation of a Yuan family. Fortunately, Yuan Yong is a sensible child. Every time he snatches a woman, he will deal with it properly so as not to affect the reputation of the Yuan family. Chapter 189. Are you looking for me? Master. But at this moment, the housekeeper Yuan Fu hurried in and pointed at the person following behind him and said, "This person said he has something important to report." "Oh." Yuan Zhu looked at the person behind the butler and said in an orderly manner, "Who are you? What do you need to report?" Although Yuan Zhu could not recognize this person, he could roughly judge that this person was a clerk in one of the Yuan family stores. Because of the Yuan family's businesses, the clothing of the clerks in their stores was strictly regulated, and this person's clothes were exactly what the clerks in the Yuan family stores wore. "Greetings, Master Yuan." When a man heard Yuan Zhu's question, he knelt on the ground with a thud, his face filled with fear, and said, "I am a clerk at Yuan's pharmacy. I came here to report the news about the pharmacy to the master." "News from the pharmacy?" Yuan Yufrovnid. The Yuan family's pharmacy had always been run by Yuan Hua, the Yuan family. Although Yuan Hua was old, he was very steady and nothing should have gone wrong. What happened to the pharmacy? Although Yuan's pharmacy doesn't have many customers, it is one of the most profitable industries of the Yuan family. So Yuan Zhu can't help but care about it. The clerk's eyes were filled with fear, and he spoke tremblingly. "Two murderers just broke into the pharmacy. After entering the pharmacy, they killed the shopkeeper without saying a word, and then left." "What?" Yuan Zhu, Yuan Yong, and Yuan Fu in the room all widened their eyes, as if they could not believe what the waiter said. The Yuan family has been established in Taiping County for 100 years and has been running the Yuan's pharmacy for decades, but there has never been such an incident where someone broke into the store and killed the shopkeeper in public. Who dares to be so arrogant? Yuan Zhu's expression was dazed. First, the Zhu family was destroyed, and then the owner of the Yuan family medicine shop was killed in public. Yuan Zhu couldn't help but wonder, could it be that the Yuan family has fallen to the point where they can be bullied by others? "Father." Yuan Yong quickly recovered and said angrily, "No matter who killed the shopkeeper, he must be shot dead immediately." The Yuan family is a large family and the most powerful family in Taiping County. Such families often attach great importance to face. The owner of the drugstore was killed in front of people. If the Yuan family did not quickly kill the murderer, people would inevitably look down on the Yuan family. Good. Yuan Ju glanced at Yuan Yong approvingly, then asked his attendant, "Are those two murderers masked?" "No." "Do you recognize those two people?" "I recognize it." "Very good." After a brief inquiry, Yuan Ju looked at Yuan Yong and said, "I'll leave this matter to you. Contact Yuan Jiang and make sure to find the thief before sunset." And Yuan Ju made a gesture of wiping his neck with a ferocious look. "No matter who it is, if they dare to provoke the Yuan family, they will only die." "Don't worry, father," Yuan Yong said solemnly. "I will find the thief and use his head to comfort Yuan Hua's spirit in heaven." After saying that, Yuan Yong brought the shop assistants and several 8th rank warriors from his clan and rushed to the county government office, where they found the chief constable Yuan Jiang, who was on duty. After quickly explaining the whole story to Yuan Jiang, Yuan Yong said, "Uncle Jiang, my father asked us to find the thief as soon as possible and bring him to justice." "I see." Yuan Jiang nodded, with a fierce light flashing in his eyes. As a member of the Yuan family, he had reason to be angry when a member of the Yuan family was killed and died so miserably. Of course, compared to Yuan Hua's death, what made Yuan Jiang even more angry was the behavior of the two thieves who completely disregarded the Yuan family. Soon, Yuan Jiang recruited a large number of constables and sent them out to search for the two thieves. About half an hour later, all the dispatch captains returned and reported to Yuan Jiang, "Captain Yuan, the whereabouts of the thief have been found. Tell me quickly." According to what my subordinates have discovered, after killing shopkeeper Yuan, the two thieves made no attempt to conceal their tracks. They left the pharmacy in a brazen manner and then checked into the Taiwan restaurant in the city. After listening to the report from his subordinates, Yuan Jiang was speechless. He didn't know whether these two thieves were so bold or had no idea about the influence of the Yuan family in Taiping County. After killing people, they didn't even think of hiding their whereabouts. Instead, they left in a swagger. Did they really think that the Yuan family couldn't do anything to them? This thief is really brave. Yuan Yong laughed out loud in anger. This shows that you don't take our Yuan family seriously at all. After saying that, Yuan Yong continued, "Uncle Jiang, I won't stay any longer. I'm going to take that thief's head." Yuan Yong waved his hand and took the 3 8th grade warriors of the Yuan family out of the county government office and went straight to Taiwan restaurant. Yuan Jiang was obviously not at ease with Yuan Yong acting alone, so he brought the head of the police from the yamen and followed Yuan Yong. Taiwan restaurant. Chen Dao sat in the guest room on the 2nd floor, frequently looking at the street outside the window, as if waiting for something. Behind Chen Dao was Chun Cheng, who remained silent. The Yuan family is so slow. Chen Dao, who had been sitting in the guest room waiting for nearly an hour, murmured that the reason he chose to kill Yuan Hua in front of the waiter was to catch the big fish of the Yuan family. However, the efficiency of the Yuan family was obviously much worse than Chen Dao had imagined. Such a long time had passed, and no one from the Yuan family had come to the door. But Chen Dao was not in a hurry. He drank the coarse tea brought by the restaurant waiter while looking at the street outside the window, waiting for the Yuan family to arrive. "Here I come." Another quarter of an hour later, Chen Dao put down the tea bowl in his hand, turned around, and said to Chun Cheng behind him, "Let's go downstairs to welcome our distinguished guests." After saying that, Chen Dao was the first to leave the guest room and walk downstairs. At the same time, Yuan Yong and Yuan Hua led a large group of people and rushed into the hall of Taiwan restaurant. "Mr. Yuan, Captain Yuan." The owner of Taiwan restaurant obviously recognized the two men. Seeing their aggressive appearance, he hurried forward and said respectfully, "Welcome, two distinguished guests, to Taiwan restaurant. Stop talking nonsense." Yuan Yong waved his hand to interrupt the shopkeeper and asked directly, "Did two people check into Taiwan restaurant just now?" After saying that, Yuan Yong also described the appearance of Chun Dao and Chen Cheng. Hearing this, the shopkeeper recalled for a moment and quickly replied, "Two guests have checked into the restaurant." "I don't know. Which room are they in?" Yuan Yong asked. "This." The shopkeeper hesitated for a moment. Taiwan restaurant was considered a high-end restaurant in Taiping County, and, generally speaking, they were not likely to disclose customer information. However, unfortunately, the person who came was from the Yuan family. Although the boss behind the Taiwan hotel had some power, it was far less than that of the Yuan family. Therefore, although the shopkeeper was reluctant, after weighing it for a moment, he decided to tell the room numbers of Chun Dao and Chun Cheng. Are you looking for me? Before the shopkeeper could answer, a voice came from the stairs, and then the figures of Chun Dao and Chun Cheng slowly appeared in the sight of everyone in the hall. Chapter 190 Audacious. Looking at Chun Dao slowly walking down the stairs, Yuan Yong turned to the drugstore clerk who had been with him and asked, "Is it them?" "Yes, that's them." The clerk nodded repeatedly with a look of horror. He had a very deep impression of Chun Dao and Chun Cheng, especially Chun Dao, the thin-looking boy. It was this boy who, like the most brutal criminal, crushed the drugstore owner's head to pieces. Okay. Yuan Yong laughed out loud, looking at Chun Dao with disdain in his eyes. "You are so audacious. You killed my Yuan family's people, and you didn't even think about escaping early." As soon as Yuan Yong said this, the owner of Taiwan Restaurant and many guests who were dining at Taiwan Restaurant were stunned. How could this person be so bold as to kill someone from the Yuan family? I'm afraid this young man is finished. No one who has offended the Yuan family has ever escaped unscathed, let alone he killed someone from the Yuan family. With the Yuan family making such a big fuss, Yuan Yong and Yuan Jiang are here. The person who was killed is probably no small figure. Taiwan Restaurant is one of the more upscale restaurants in Taiping County. People who can dine here are either rich or noble, or at least have some wealth. Therefore, these guests are very clear about the power of the Yuan family. If these two young men kill someone from the Yuan family, they will probably not be able to survive. "Are you from Yuan family?" Chun Dao looked at Yuan Yong, somewhat surprised, because he had seen this man before. He was the young man in brocade clothes who had looked down on him, Chun Jiang and others outside the grain store in the East Market. He didn't expect that this man was from the Yuan family. Yuan Yong seemed disdainful of answering Chun Dao's question, and instead asked, "Kill me, the owner of the Yuan's pharmacy. How do you want to die? Do you want to commit suicide? Or do you want me to personally skin you alive and pull out your tendons?" What? These two people actually killed the owner of Yuan's pharmacy. The Yuan's pharmacy is one of the Yuan family's most profitable businesses. Aren't these two people too bold? How dare they kill Yuan Hua? How audacious. These two are truly audacious. Everyone in the hall was shocked, but after that, they were filled with a hint of admiration. In the entire Taiping County, no one dared to provoke the Yuan family, but Chun Dao and Chun Cheng dared to kill the manager of the Yuan family. This made it difficult for everyone not to admire their courage. The Yuan family is always so confident. Chun Dao sneered. Whether it was Yuan Hua from the drugstore or Yuan Yong in front of him, their confidence had reached a blind point, as if they could decide other people's life and death with a single word. Of course, for the people of Taiping County, the Yuan family could indeed decide their life and death with a single word, but unfortunately, Chun Dao is not an ordinary citizen. "Madoka." Chun Dao gently stroked Xiao Yuan's head and ordered, "Go." As soon as the words fell, Xiao Yuan, who was lying on Chun Dao's shoulder, immediately disappeared. What is that? Yuan Yong's pupil shrank. As an 8th rank warrior, he had extremely sharp eyesight and had noticed the cat-like animal on Chun Dao's shoulder long before. He had thought it was a pet, but the moment Xiao Yuan disappeared from his sight, his pupil shrank instantly, and he sensed a dangerous aura. "Ah!" As soon as Yuan Yong finished speaking, a scream came from behind him. Behind him, an 8th grade warrior from the Yuan family had 3 bloodlines on his neck. The bloodlines gradually expanded in everyone's sight, and soon, a large amount of blood gushed out. Ho ho ho. The 8th rank warrior opened his eyes wide and stretched out his hands to grab something, but to no avail. Gradually, the strength faded from his body, his whole body went limp, and he fell to the ground, completely unable to breathe. What? Why did old Wu die? What the hell is that? How can it be so fast? The other Yuan family warriors who came with Yuan Yong and Yuan Zhang's team all huddled together, their faces full of vigilance, and their hearts filled with horror. At that moment, they only saw a black shadow flash by, and then the Yuan family warrior named Lao Wu was killed. This made them terrified. Someone's dead. Not only Yuan Jiang and his group, but even the guests dining in the restaurant had expressions of fear on their faces. They didn't even want to eat, and all looked for places to hide. Some hid in the corners, and some hid under the tables, as if this would make them feel safer. At the same time, Xiao Yuan's attack did not stop. After killing a Yuan family warrior named Lao Wu with one claw, Xiao Yuan attacked again. moving through the crowd and targeting weaker people. In a short while, most of the constables brought by Yuan Jiang were killed. The way each of them died was surprisingly similar. They all had their necks cut and were killed in one blow. Looking at his subordinates falling one by one, Yuan Jiang was heartbroken. Although these people were not warriors, each of them was a carefully selected expert and was the basis of his power in the county government. But now, they fell to the ground one by one like cut straw, which made Yuan Jiang shocked and angry. Yuan Jiang looked at Chen Dao with a cold gaze and said, "You killed the constable from the county government office. Are you planning a rebellion?" Hearing this, Chen Dao immediately laughed. These people, bullying the weak and fearing the strong, has almost become their nature. When the other party is unable to resist, they will bully the other party at will. However, when they find out that the other party is powerful, they will use their official status to try to stop the other party. This behavior is really ridiculous. I don't want to rebel. Yuan Jiang breathed a sigh of relief when Chen Dao said this. But before he could finish his sigh of relief, Chen Dao continued, "Killing you guys wouldn't be considered a rebellion." As Chen Dao finished speaking, several miserable screams were heard, and the last few remaining captains behind Yuan Jiang all fell to the ground. At this point, all the more than 10 constables brought by Yuan Jiang had died, without a single survivor. Only Yuan Jiang, Yuan Yong, and 2 8th-grade warriors from the Yuan family were still alive. At this time, Xiao Yuan's appearance also appeared in the sight of Yuan Yong and others. But Xiao Yuan still looked so naive and harmless, and did not seem to be aggressive at all. However, Yuan Jiang, who had killed more than a dozen of his subordinates, looked at Xiao Yuan with eyes that were no different from looking at a ghost, and even more terrifying than a ghost. Ghosts are just imaginary creatures created by people that can kill people, but Madoka actually killed more than 10 of his subordinates. What kind of beast is this that is so powerful? The shopkeeper of Taiping County, who was hiding under a table, stared blankly at Xiao Yuan, who had just appeared. He was shocked in his heart. This little beast, which seemed to have no attack power at all, was actually incredibly powerful. In just a few breaths, all of Yuan Jiang's men were slaughtered. Both the speed and the method of killing were shocking. Chapter 191, Always So Confident. No wonder that young man dared to kill the Yuan family. It turns out he has such a trump card. This little cat-like beast is too powerful, isn't it? Even so many warriors from the Yuan family can't do anything to it. More than a dozen lives. It hasn't been long, and they're all dead. The guests hiding in the corners and under the tables were also dumbfounded. They saw dozens of people die in front of them. The visual impact was likely to make many people lose sleep at night. At the same time, Xiao Yuan's watery eyes fell on a table and stared at Yuan Jiang and others opposite, as if thinking about how to launch an attack. Yuan Jiang and the others have already gathered together. With 4 8th-grade warriors gathered together, it is obviously not easy for Xiao Yuan to kill them with ghostly speed as before. Yuan Yong stared at Xiao Yuan cautiously as he spoke. "Brother, there might have been some misunderstanding between us just now. Could we discuss this?" At this moment, Yuan Yong had already put aside his contempt for Chen Dao. Before he met Chen Dao, and even before Xiao Yuan took action, he had never taken Chen Dao seriously. He just regarded Chen Dao as an audacious madman. It was not until this moment that he realized they were not daring, but were absolutely confident. The monster Xiao Yuan alone was enough to kill them all. "Discuss." Chen Dao smiled and asked with interest, "Your name should be Yuan Yong, right? The eldest son of the head of the Yuan family?" "Good." Seeing Chen Dao's willingness to communicate, Yuan Yong's eyes lit up and he quickly said, "I am Yuan Yong, the eldest son of the Yuan family. May I know your name, brother?" Chen Dao did not answer Yuan Yong's question, but continued to ask, "I heard that you like married women?" This was the information Chen Dao got from Su Jiwen. Although Su Jiwen seemed to be a decorative county magistrate, he had actually secretly collected a lot of information about the 3 major families and had a very good understanding of them. Well, Yuan Yong felt depressed for a moment. Very few people knew that he liked married women, and even those who knew never dared to talk about it in front of him. After all, for a big family like the Yuan family, the eldest son of the family likes married women and likes to forcibly abduct women. This is ultimately a matter of shame. Mentioning this matter in front of the Yuan family will undoubtedly offend the Yuan family. Brother, Yuan Yong, unwilling to bring up the matter, chose not to answer the question. He clasped his fists and said, "We are members of the Yuan family. You should be familiar with how the Yuan family is doing in Taiping County. How about we shake hands and make peace? Yuan Yong knew very well that it was no longer possible for them to kill Chen Dao to avenge Yuan Hua and regain their face. The most important thing for him now was how to escape safely. Therefore, Yuan Yong said these words which were half negotiation and half threat, expressing his intention to negotiate peace with Chen Dao, while secretly threatening Chen Dao in the name of the Yuan family. Yuan family? Chen Dao sneered and said, "Don't worry. After you go down, the other members of the Yuan family will also go down to accompany you." As soon as the words fell, Xiao Yuan moved. Xiaoyan, who was standing on the table just now, disappeared in an instant and turned into a black shadow in the sight of Yuan Yong and others. "Careful," Yuan Yong shouted. "Yuan Ing, Yuan man, you guys take care of the cat. Uncle Jiang, and I will deal with that guy." Yuan Yong knew very well that they could not deal with Xiao Yuan, but they could deal with the person who commanded Xiao Yuan, Chen Dao. As early as when he was talking with Chen Dao just now, he had already explained to everyone what they should do through gestures. Therefore, after Xiao Yuan attacked, the four people responded immediately. Yuan Ing and Yuan Man punched the air, trying to stop Xiao Yuan as much as possible. Yuan Yong and Yuan Jiang suddenly jumped up and rushed towards Chen Dao. That's quite clever. Chen Dao looked at the two attackers with a normal expression. Although Yuan Yong was a sex-crazed maniac, he had a clear mind. He knew he couldn't deal with Xiao Yuan, so he turned his gun around and attacked him. Unfortunately, what Yuan Yong didn't know was that Chen Dao was a 7th-grade warrior, and behind him was a gifted 8th-grade warrior, Chen Cheng. "Brother Dao, be careful." Chen Cheng reacted quickly. When Yuan Yong and others suddenly jumped up, he appeared in front of Chen Dao and punched Yuan Jiang. Warrior, just by looking at Chen Cheng's reaction and speed, Yuan Jiang knew that Chen Cheng must be a warrior. He quickly stopped, drew the sword from his waist, and slashed at Chen Cheng. Chen Cheng was startled and immediately retracted his fist and slapped the side of the knife with his palm. Clang! The blade was bounced back, and the huge force transmitted from the blade made Yuan Jiang's face change slightly. This Iron Tower-like man was undoubtedly an 8th-grade warrior, and not just an ordinary 8th-grade warrior, but an 8th-grade warrior with huge strength. Just now, when he slapped the blade with his palm, the force transmitted from a blade made Yuan Jiang's palm numb. Where did these murderers come from? Yuan Jiang secretly groaned at his heart. In the entire Taiping County, apart from the 3 major families and the 3 martial arts halls, there were very few 8th-grade martial artists among the people, or even none at all. In this situation, the sudden appearance of Chen Cheng seemed extremely abrupt. What was even more terrifying was that Chen Cheng also possessed such tremendous strength. Under normal circumstances, Yuan Jiang would definitely not be willing to confront such a warrior, but at this time he had no choice. Xiao Yuan's ghostly speed made Yuan Jiang give up the idea of escaping, and he could only fight. Thinking of this, Yuan Jiang clenched the blade and looked at Chen Cheng opposite him with a serious expression. At the same time, Yuan Yong had successfully bypassed Chen Cheng and appeared in front of Chen Dao. "Your pet and your guards have been entangled. What other means do you have?" Yuan Yong sneered, looking confident of victory. In his opinion, since Chen Dao brought pets and guard with him when he went out and protected himself so strictly, he must not be too powerful. This was Yuan Yong's judgment based on Chen Dao's age. Chen Dao looked no more than 15 or 16 years old. Even if he had great talent, at this age he was at most a 9th-rank warrior, and it was possible that he wasn't even a warrior at all. Therefore, Yuan Jiang, who was already close to Chen Dao at this time, had already sensed the arrival of victory. As long as Chen Dao was killed, the terrifying little beast would inevitably give up attacking him and others because there was no one to command it. As for Chen Cheng was only an 8th-grade warrior, and there were 4 8th-grade warriors left on his side. If they rushed forward together, no matter how powerful Chen Cheng was, he could not fight against 8 hands with 2 fists. By then, the crisis facing him and others would naturally be resolved. "Are you Yuan family members always so confident?" Chen Dao chuckled and said, "Are you so sure you can kill me?" Chapter 192. Congratulations. You guessed half right. What else? There was a hint of sneer on Yuan Yong's lips. When a warrior faces an ordinary person, he will definitely crush them. Not to mention that he, Yuan Yong, is an 8th-rank warrior. It would be easy for him to capture Chen Dao or kill him. You don't want to tell me that you're also a warrior, do you? Even if you were a warrior, what's the use? I am an 8th-rank warrior, and it is easy for me to suppress a ninth-rank warrior. Yuan Yong took a step forward, and his 5 fingers formed claws to grab Chen Dao's throat. Congratulations, you guessed half right. At the critical moment of life and death, Chen Dao laughed instead. I am indeed a warrior, but not a 9th-grade warrior. After he finished speaking, Chen Dao moved. Chen Dao clenched his right fist and punched out. The punch was like thunder and hit Yuan Yong's chest with lightning speed. How is that possible? The moment he was hit, blood spurted from Yuan Yong's mouth, and he flew backwards. His mind went blank. He had always considered Chen Dao the weakest target, thinking of capturing him alive or killing him to escape the danger. However, he never expected Chen Dao was not the weak, ordinary person he had imagined, but a warrior, and a warrior far stronger than him. Yes, just from the punch Chen Dao threw, Yuan Yong knew that Chen Dao must be a warrior far stronger than himself. But how is this possible? Chen Dao looks only about 15 or 16 years old. How can he be better than me at such a young age? At this moment, Yuan Yong couldn't help but doubt his talent, which he had always been proud of. He was the most talented of the younger generation of the Yuan family. He successfully advanced to the 8th rank warrior at the age of 19 and was unanimously believed by the Yuan clan to have the potential to break through to the 6th rank before the age of 30. Yuan Yong had always been proud of his talent, but now he then realized that his talent was nothing compared to the young man opposite him. Bang! Yuan Yong felt a sharp pain in his back and flew backwards, falling to the ground. Blood gushed out his mouth. Chen Dao's punch was so powerful that it almost shattered his internal organs. At this moment, his body felt like a raging sea, and his internal organs seemed to be displaced. Xiaoyong. Seeing Yuan Yong fall to the ground, Yuan Jiang couldn't help but shout out, horrified. When they made the plan for Yuan Yong to capture Chen Dao, they had already assumed that Chen Dao wasn't a warrior, but the reality is completely contrary to their assumption. Chen Dao is not only a warrior, but also a 7th-grade warrior. His strength is far superior to Yuan Yong. Yuan Jiang, realizing this, immediately felt despair. Where on earth did this monster come from? Not only did he possess such a terrifying monster, but his own strength was also so formidable. Drink! Just when Yuan Jiang was in a daze, Chen Sheng seized the opportunity and punched Yuan Jiang in the face. Yuan Jiang was unable to dodge and took the punch headlong. Yuan Jiang let out a cry of pain. His whole face was covered in blood, as if a paint shop had been opened. The bridge of his nose was broken instantly, and his entire nose collapsed. At the same time, Chen Sheng continued to attack without stopping, and his fists fell towards Yuan Jiang like raindrops. Bang! 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 In a short while, Yuan Jiang was completely unrecognizable. His entire face was covered in blood, and his original appearance could no longer be seen. He was in a dying state, breathing out more than breathing in. On the other side, Xiao Yuan was also attacking 2 8th-grade warriors from the Yuan family. These 2 8th-grade warriors were very smart. They could not see Xiao Yuan's figure with the naked eye, so they leaned back to back and waved their fists at the air, trying their best to prevent Xiao Yuan from attacking them. What a pity. After all, the 2 of them are only 8th-grade warriors, while Xiao Yuan is a monster equivalent to a 6th-grade warrior. The gap between the 2 is simply incomparable. A scream suddenly rang out, and a Yuan family warrior who was still waving his turtle fist froze in his tracks. A line of blood appeared on his throat, and then the strength gradually drained from his body, and he fell to the ground helplessly. Not good. The other Yuan family warrior was shocked and knew that he was no longer able to fight against Xiao Yuan. He turned around and wanted to escape from the building. But how could Xiao Yuan give him such an opportunity? As the warrior turned around, a black shadow flashed past his eyes. Then, the warrior's body stiffened and he slowly lowered his head. But a similar bloodline appeared on his neck. And then, the bloodline gradually expanded and the blood continued to flow. Oh! The warrior laughed miserably, then fell to the ground, completely dead. At this point, of the dozen or so people from the Yuan family who came, only Yuan Yong was still able to move. Yuan Yong, who was lying on the ground, looked at the Yuan family warriors who fell one after another with bloodshot eyes. The 8th-grade warriors were the absolute backbone of the Yuan family, but they died here so easily, which made Yuan Yong extremely hateful. Of course, compared to hatred, the fear in Yuan Yong's heart is even greater. Now, we have almost no power to resist and can only be slaughtered. Yuan Yong didn't want to die. He was the eldest son of the Yuan family and had a high status. He still had so many things and so many women to enjoy. He was reluctant to die and was extremely afraid of death. Therefore, when he saw Chan Dao slowly approaching, Yuan Yong couldn't help but beg, "Brother, please spare my life. The Yuan family will definitely give me a generous gift afterwards." Chen Dao didn't answer. He just walked closer to Yuan Yong and stepped on him. "When you raped women, did they ever beg you to spare them?" "Of course." Yuan Yong answered subconsciously in his heart. Of course, he couldn't say it out loud. Instead, he said, "Brother, those women are just lowly people. It is their honor to be favored by me. Besides, I have already given their families enough compensation." "Oh." Chen Dao nodded noncommittally. Yuan Yong's answer could only be described as a tragedy of this era. The aristocratic and powerful were high and mighty, while the common people at the bottom were treated as pariahs. When their wives were kidnapped or abused, no one could stand up for them, and they themselves didn't even dare to speak out. How sad is this? What did you just say? Sparing your life. The Yuan family has a generous gift for you. Chen Dao suddenly spoke. Upon hearing this, Yuan Yong's eyes lit up, and he quickly said, "Don't worry, brother. My Yuan family is the richest in Taiping County. As long as you can let me go, the Yuan family will definitely offer you a generous gift." There was a barely perceptible glint of hatred in Yuan Yong's eyes. Offering a generous gift was just an excuse for him to get away. Chen Dao killed so many people from the Yuan family and humiliated him so much. Yuan Yong has made up his mind that as long as he can escape back to the Yuan family, he will definitely summon all the 7th grade warriors of the Yuan family to cut this man into pieces. Otherwise, he will never be able to get rid of the hatred in his heart. Chapter 193, Is the World Going to Change? A generous gift from the Yuan family? Chen Dao sneered and said, "Don't worry, I will go and pick up this generous gift from the Yuan family myself." As soon as he finished speaking, Chen Dao exerted force with his feet and stepped hard. In an instant, Yuan Yong's chest collapsed, his eyes bulged, and he completely lost his breath. At the same time, Chen Sheng on the other side snatched Yuan Zhang's sword and slashed Yuan Zhang's neck with it. Puff! A huge head flew up into the sky, then fell to the ground and rolled over. Yuan Zhang's eyes, which were still open in death, could still be vaguely seen. At this point, Yuan Yong, Yuan Jiang, and the people they brought with them were all dead. The blood dyed the ground on the first floor of the restaurant red. The guests hiding under the tables and in the corners were horrified at the sight of the blood on the ground. They're all dead. All the Yuan family members are dead. Yuan Jiang and Yuan Yongquan, the Yuan family's most respected disciple, were killed. This is a major event. Where did this ruthless person come from? He killed so many people from the Yuan family. Isn't he afraid of revenge from the Yuan family? Too cruel. More than a dozen people, all killed. At this moment, the guests in the hotel looked at Chen Dao with shock in their eyes. This boy, who looked only 15 or 16 years old, was incredibly brave. Not only did he kill the owner of the Yuan's pharmacy, but he also killed all the Yuan family members who came to seek revenge. This man's ferocity is truly terrifying. Snap! 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 At this moment, applause suddenly came from the silent hall, and then 2 figures walked in from the entrance of the restaurant. Young Master Chen is truly a hidden talent. Su Jiwen walked in and applauded while looking at Chen Dao deeply. When they were discussing in the backyard of the Fuhu boxing gym, they had already made a plan to eradicate the Yuan family, and Chen Dao was currently carrying out the first step of the plan. First, cutting off part of the Yuan family's power. Yes, Chen Dao killed the owner of Yuan's pharmacy to attract Yuan Jiang and others, and then killed Yuan Jiang and others first. This was the first step of the 3 people's plan, because they were worried about Chen Dao, Su Jiwen, and Li, who had actually arrived at Taiwan restaurant a long time ago, but they were just observing from outside and didn't come in. It was precisely because he had been observing from the outside that Su Jiwen truly understood Chen Dao's strength. Before, he instinctively thought that Chen Dao's fighting power mainly came from Xiao Yuan and Chen Sheng. It was not until the end of this battle that Su Jiwen discovered that Chen Dao was actually the most hidden one. Chen Dao, who seemed harmless on the surface, was actually the one hiding the most. He easily defeated the 8th rank warrior Yuan Yong. If it weren't for this battle, Su Jiwen would probably still be in the dark, thinking that Chen Dao was just a warrior who had just entered the 9th rank. Not only Su Jiwen, but even Li Hu looked at Chen Dao with shock on his face, and his heart was deeply shaken. When he first met Chen Dao was still a skinny-looking farm boy. With the idea of making friends with Chen Dao, he gave the Subduing Tiger Fist manual to Chen Dao. It had been less than 2 months since he had handed the Subduing Tiger Fist manual to Chen Dao. In just 2 months, Chen Dao had leapt from an ordinary person to a 7th rank warrior. This upgrade speed made Li Hu feel like he was being outdone by others. He had been practicing Fuquan since he was a child, but after decades, he had only just barely reached the 7th level. And what about Chen Dao? In just 2 months, he had caught up with Li Hu, who had practiced for decades. Compared to Chen Dao, Li Hu seemed to be worse than a dog on the side of the road. Su County Magistrate, Li Pavilion Master. Chen Dao nodded at the two of them. In the hall, many guests and restaurant owners frowned when they heard Chen Dao's voice. Many of them had never seen the magistrate of Taiping County, but that did not prevent them from knowing the magistrate's status in Taiping County. Anyone with a certain status in Taiping County knows that the county magistrate of Taiping County is a complete mascot and has no control over anything in Taiping County. However, this mascot-like county magistrate suddenly appeared here, and it seemed that he was acquainted with the murderer who killed the Yuan family. It seems that the county magistrate of Taiping County is not just a decoration. Many guests seemed lost in thought. The owner of Taiwan Restaurant crawled out from under the table and respectfully saluted Su Jiwen, saying, "Your Excellency, Mr. Li." Su Jiwen nodded indifferently, then said, "Boss, I will bear the losses of your restaurant. You can come to my house to get compensation later." "I dare not." The shopkeeper Lien Dao didn't dare to do so. Having witnessed the battle just now, he felt that it was quite good enough that he was still alive. How could he dare to ask for any compensation? That young man even dared to kill people from the Yuan family. If he dared to ask for compensation from such a vicious man, he might be the next one to die. "Just take what's yours." Su Jiwen didn't exchange excessive pleasantries with the shopkeeper. He looked at Chen Dao and said, "Friend Chen, now that Yuan Jiang is dead, should we proceed with our next plan?" "Certainly." Chen Dao nodded, put Xiao Yuan on his shoulder, and said, "Let's go." So, Chen Dao, Su Jiwen, Li Hu, and Chen Sheng walked out of Taiwan Restaurant side by side and headed towards Yuan's house. Inside the restaurant, after Chen Dao and the others left, the guests crawled out from their hiding places, looking at their backs and talking endlessly. From what County Magistrate Su said, it seems they have further plans. After killing Yuan Jiang and Yuan Yong, what's the next plan? Could it be? I'm afraid they're going to deal with the Yuan family. Things are about to change in Taiping County. I didn't expect it. Magistrate Su, who is considered a mere figurehead, is actually so well hidden. Everyone says that the Taiping County Magistrate is just a figurehead. Sure enough, the rumors misled me. How can this County Magistrate Su be considered a mere figurehead? At this moment, both the shopkeeper and the guests had a strong premonition. Taiping County was about to change. It was obvious that County Magistrate Su and his group were heading for the Yuan family. The fight between the County Magistrate and the Yuan family, no matter who wins or loses, will cause a drastic change in the situation in Taiping County. Shopkeeper. A guest looked at the owner of Taiwan Restaurant and asked thoughtfully, "Does the owner behind you know about this?" Hearing this, the shopkeeper couldn't help but smile bitterly. "You all know that the master behind me doesn't care about anything and only wants to live a leisurely life." How could he know these things? Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but nod secretly. They all knew the boss behind Taiwan Restaurant and were well aware of his character. This man is the county magistrate of Taiping County and nominally the second in command of Taiping County, but he is not keen on power. He only wants to be a rich and idle person. He lives a rich life relying on the income of Taiwan Restaurant, and his life is quite happy. Chapter 194 Pain. Yuan Family. Yuan Ju, who had been waiting for Yuan Yang's return for a long time, was pacing back and forth anxiously in the living room. For some reason, he had been feeling uneasy since Yuan Yang left. This feeling came so inexplicably that it made Yuan Ju a little irritable. "Master, there's no need to worry." The housekeeper Yuan Fu hurriedly consoled him. The eldest young master is accompanied by the best warriors in the clan, and Yuan Jiang is also with him, so there will definitely be no accidents. Hearing this, Yuan Ju felt relieved. "That's right. I was just worrying too much." The Yuan family's power was at its peak throughout Taiping County, and Yuan Ju could not imagine that Yuan Yong would be in any danger. Thinking of this, Yuan Ju's worries faded a lot. He sat on the armchair, picked up the tea, and drank it slowly. Ooh! But at this moment, a loud shout came from outside the door. Yuan Ju suddenly stood up and walked hurriedly out of the living room. At the same time, Chen Dao, Chun Cheng, Su Jiwen, and Li Hu were already standing in front of the gate of the Yuan family. The loud shout just now was made by the guards at the gate. The Yuan family is truly powerful. Even the gatekeeper is a 9th-rank warrior. Li Hu sighed, then took a step forward and grabbed the guard's throat with his 5 fingers like claws. Well, the guard whose throat was locked struggled instinctively and wanted to speak out to remind the Yuan family in the mansion, but Li Hu didn't give him the chance at all and twisted his arm. Crack! There was a crisp sound of broken bones, and the guard's neck twisted and he lost his breath instantly. Li Hungria, what are you going to do? When he arrived at the front yard, Yuan Ju happened to see Li Hu twisting the guard's neck and was stunned. He naturally knew Li Hu. After all, Fuhu Boxing Gym was a big force in Taiping County. But it was precisely because he knew Li Hu that he seemed particularly shocked at this moment. He had no grudges against Li Hu. So why did Li Hu suddenly appear here and blatantly kill the Yuan family's guards? Not only Li Hu, Yuan Ju also saw Su Jiwen behind Li Hu. Li Hu and the county magistrate came together, and they looked like they were coming with bad intentions. Yuan Ju immediately felt uneasy. Brother Yuan. Li Hu casually tossed the body of the guard aside and smiled, narrowing his eyes. I have nothing better to do, so I thought of visiting the Yuan family. Guest. Yuan Ju looked at the body of the guard who had already stopped breathing, a hint of danger flashing in his eyes. Is this how you, Li Hu, treat guests? After saying this, Yuan Ju looked at Su Jiwen again and said, Su County Master, are you here as a guest as well? Certainly, Su Jiwen said with a smile. I am an official appointed by the Imperial Court after all. You, the gatekeeper, are so tactless that you even asked who I am and show me no respect at all. Master Li couldn't stand it, so he taught him a lesson on my behalf. I'm sure Master Yuan won't mind, right? Yuan Ju laughed out of anger, killed the Yuan family's guard, and asked Yuan Jujia if he minded. It seems that my Yuan family has been too polite to you in the past, which is why you don't take my Yuan family seriously. As Yuan Ju finished speaking, one after another powerful figures appeared beside him. They were the warriors of the Yuan family. Yuan Long, Yuan Xiong. Li Hu frowned and looked at the 2 people standing on the left and right of Yuan Ju with a serious expression. These 2 people were the 7th grade warriors of the Yuan family. Together with Yuan Ju, who was at the peak of the 7th grade, they were the peak combat power of the Yuan family. In addition, there were many 8th grade and 9th grade warriors around the 3 of them. Obviously, the guard shout just now had gathered all the warriors of the Yuan family. Su County Magistrate. Yuan Ju stared at Su Jiwen and said, Why don't you just be a good county magistrate? Why are you provoking my Yuan family? Of course it's because I'm poor. Su Jiwen smiled and said, And your Yuan family is quite wealthy, so naturally I have to borrow some from you, Yuan family. It's a pity that you, Master Yuan, didn't give me face before. After saying that, Su Jiwen continued, Master Yuan may not know that we just killed your Yuan family, Yuan Jiang and Yuan Yong. Before Yuan Yong died, he said in person that the Yuan family would give us a generous gift. What? As soon as Su Jiwen said this, Yuan Ju, Yuan Fu, and the warriors of the Yuan family were all shocked. Yuan Yong was the most talented person of the younger generation of the Yuan family. He was the most praised by the Yuan family and was regarded as the hope of the Yuan family to make further progress. Yuan Jiang was also extremely important to the Yuan family because he was the key to the Yuan family's control of the county government. But at this time, Su Jiwen said that Yuan Yong had been killed by him. My son. After a brief moment of daze, Yuan Ju's eyes turned red and he let out a heart-wrenching cry of pain. He had many wives and concubines and had no less than 20 children, but his most beloved son was undoubtedly Yuan Yong. Yuan Yong not only has an outstanding talent in martial arts, but he is also very reliable in his work. He is the son that Yuan Ju values the most, no doubt about it. Therefore, Yuan Yong's death was like cutting out a piece of flesh from Yuan Ju's heart, causing him so much pain that he wanted to die and couldn't breathe. Su Jiwen. Yuan Ju's eyes were bloodshot, and he stared at Su Jiwen like a ferocious beast waiting to devour him. If you dare to kill my son, I will make sure you die a miserable death. At this moment, Yuan Ju's mind was completely irrational. He no longer cared about Su Jiwen's status as an imperial official and directly ordered everyone around him, "Go, capture them alive. I will skin them alive." Yes, the Yuan family's warriors responded in unison and immediately took action. Yuan Long and Yuan Xiong, as 7th grade warriors, were naturally the first to attack. Yuan Long rushed directly towards Su Jiwen and punched him in the face. Yuan Xiong was also extremely fast and went straight for Li Hu. At the same time, other 8th rank and 9th rank warriors also rushed toward Chun Dao and Chun Sheng. They didn't know who Chun Dao and Chun Sheng were, and only regarded Chun Dao as an insignificant little person. Such a small fry would naturally be the first target to be eliminated. "Brother Dao, be careful." Chun Sheng adhered to his duty as a guard, took a step forward, and came in front of Chun Dao, blocking 3 9th grade warriors and 1 8th grade warrior for Chun Dao. However, Chun Sheng was only one person after all, and being able to stop 4 warriors from the Yuan family was already his limit. 4 more warriors from the Yuan family continued to attack Chun Dao. "Do you think I'm a soft persimmon?" Chun Dao smiled and instantly jumped up. He stretched out his hand, grabbed the wrist of a Yuan family warrior, and burst out with the power of a 7th grade warrior, smashing the man heavily to the ground. Boom! The huge force caused the ground to vibrate slightly. The Yuan family warrior who was knocked to the ground had a blank mind in an instant. He was knocked unconscious and didn't know how many bones in his back were broken. Blood was gushing out his mouth. He was breathing out more than breathing in, and had completely lost his fighting ability. How come? The other 3 Yuan family warriors who were attacking Chun Dao stopped almost instinctively, with fear flashing in their eyes. Chapter 195, So Fierce. Chun Dao looked like just a young boy, but no one expected that this young boy could be so ferocious. When he suddenly attacked, the warrior from the Yuan family was caught before he could even react, and then was thrown to the ground by Chun Dao. He was seriously injured and lost his combat ability. Yuan Ju also frowned and looked at Chun Dao. His eyes had been on Su Jiwen and Li Hu before. To be honest, Su Jiwen was a 7th grade warrior. He was already surprised that he could fight against a 7th grade warrior of the Yuan family. He never thought that in addition to Su Jiwen, there was someone who surprised him even more. That young man who looked no more than 15 or 16 years old was at least an 8th rank warrior. This guy is a 15 or 16-year-old 8th grade martial artist, which means his talent in martial arts is even stronger than Yuan Yong, who is regarded as the hope of the Yuan family. "Who are you?" Yuan Ju asked in a deep voice. As the largest force in Taiping, the Yuan family knew the military power of Taiping County like the back of their hand. Yuan Ju knew every 8th grade warrior by heart, but Chun Dao was not one of the warriors Yuan Ju was familiar with. For Yuan Ju, this was undoubtedly something beyond his control, and what made Yuan Ju even more worried was, this person is so young, yet he possesses the strength of an 8th grade warrior. It is very likely that there is a powerful force behind him. It's even possible that he came from the county town. Thinking of this, Yuan Ju looked at Chun Dao with a serious face, waiting for his answer. However, Chun Dao did not respond to Yuan Ju's meaning. Instead, he moved and appeared beside a warrior of the Yuan family. With his 5 fingers spread out, he grabbed the man's neck at an extremely fast speed. Then, Chun Dao twisted hard. Crack! When a sound of bones breaking was heard, the Yuan family warrior's eyes froze, and he fell to the ground in disbelief. Okay. Seeing Chun Dao ignoring him, Yuan Ju laughed in anger and said coldly, "Since you don't want to reveal your name, then die." After he finished speaking, Yuan Ju moved. Yuan Ju was like a beast out of a cage, stirring up a gust of wind. In just a breath, he appeared in front of Chun Dao and punched him. So fast. There was a hint of surprise in Chun Dao's eyes. This Yuan Ju looked like a rich man, but when he started to fight, Chun Dao found that this man was definitely a leader among the 7th grade warriors, and might even be at the peak of the 7th grade. "Chen Xiaoyu, be careful." Su Jiwen, who was fighting with a 7th grade warrior of the Yuan family, couldn't help but shout and frowned unconsciously. His estimation of Yuan Ju's strength was still a little wrong. This Yuan Ju was not only a 7th grade warrior, but also a 7th grade peak warrior, close to a 6th grade warrior. Facing Yuan Ju, who was at the peak of the 7th rank, Chun Dao naturally had no intention of fighting head-on. He tapped the ground lightly with his toes and quickly retreated, dodging Yuan Ju's fist while saying to Xiao Yuan on his shoulder, Xiao Yuan, it's your turn." "Oh my." Xiao Yuan naturally wouldn't refuse. It cutely jumped off Chun Dao's shoulder and then turned into a shadow in everyone's sight. "What is that?" Yuan Yufruovnid. Even with his eyesight, he could only see Xiao Yuan's afterimage, but could not see Xiao Yuan's specific actions. But, as a warrior at the peak of the 7th rank, Yuan Ju's perception ability is beyond words. Through the fluctuations in the air, Yuan Ju can still determine Xiao Yuan's location. Here! Suddenly, Yuan Ju turned around and punched the air behind him. "Oh my!" Xiao Yuan suddenly appeared behind Yuan Ju and quickly changed direction to avoid Yuan Ju's attack. At the same time, he kept cruising around Yuan Ju, looking for opportunities to attack Yuan Ju. How can this thing be so difficult to deal with? Yuan Ju looked around with fear on his face, ready to deal with Xiao Yuan's attack at any time. At the same time, Chun Dao, who had let Xiao Yuan entangle Yuan Ju, was not idle either. The moment Xiao Yuan restrained Yuan Ju, Chun Dao appeared in front of a 9th grade warrior of the Yuan family again, and punched the warrior's throat. Crack! The Yuan family warrior subconsciously raised his arm to block, but Chun Dao's fist was too hard. The power from a 7th grade warrior directly broke the warrior's arm bones. Immediately afterwards, Chun Dao punched out again. Bang! A dull sound was heard, and Chun Dao's fist landed directly on the warrior's chest. In an instant, the warrior cried out in pain, and several bones in his chest were broken. The whole person was hit by Chun Dao's huge force and flew up from the ground. He fell to the ground like a broken sandbag, his whole body limp, and he completely lost his combat effectiveness. Damn it! While dealing with Xiao Yuan's attack, Yuan Ju cursed inwardly. Entangled by Xiao Yuan, he had no hands free to help the Yuan family's warriors. He could only watch them being killed by Chun Dao. Well done, Chun Xiaoyu! Li Hu and Su Jiwen laughed. With Xiao Yuan and Chun Dao here, their plan to eradicate the Yuan family today would definitely succeed. Realizing this, the two men stepped up their attacks and tried their best to hold Yuan Xiong and Yuan Long back. At the same time, Chun Dao, who had killed another Yuan family warrior, appeared next to the 4th warrior. Don't even think about it. The warrior from the Yuan family was an 8th rank warrior with extremely quick reactions. Almost the moment Chun Dao approached him, he took the initiative to attack and punched Chun Dao in the face. The reaction was quite quick, but it was useless. Chun Dao smiled slightly, and instead of dodging, he punched hard. Crack! In an instant, the two fists collided. The moment the fists collided, the 8th grade warrior of the Yuan family couldn't help but let out a scream. In the pure collision of power, he was undoubtedly the loser. At this time, his fists were already in a state of skin and flesh, and all the finger bones were broken. The intense pain made cold sweat run down his forehead. On the other hand, Chun Dao had no injuries except for the slight pain in his fist. This is the difference in the grades of warriors. Chun Dao smiled slightly, and while the warrior was screaming in pain, he punched him again. Bang! The 7th rank warrior's 1,000-pound force landed on the head of the Yuan family warrior. In an instant, the man's head exploded like a watermelon, and red and white splashed everywhere, staining the ground in front of the Yuan family's gate red. Chun Dao, who blew up a Yuan family warrior with one punch, had no intention of stopping. He continued to rush towards the battlefield where Chun Sheng was, wantonly reaping the lives of Yuan family warriors. Screams rang out one after another. In a short while, all 8 Yuan family warriors who rushed towards Chun Sheng and Chun Dao were shot dead. Brother Dao, you are so awesome. Looking around, Chun Sheng scratched his head when he saw that he had no opponent left and said that all the Yuan family warriors he helped Chun Dao to stop were eventually dealt with by Chun Dao, and not a single one was left alive. Chun Dao ignored Chun Sheng and looked at the fight between Yuan Ju and Xiao Yuan. He saw that Yuan Ju was already sweating profusely. Xiao Yuan was very smart and had no intention of fighting Yuan Ju head-on. Instead, she relied on her own speed to launch sneak attacks, making Yuan Ju exhausted and tense all over, not daring to relax at all. Chapter 196 Despair. It seems that it is only a matter of time before Xiao Yuan defeats Yuan Ju. Chun Dao thought to himself that Xiao Yuan was a demon beast equivalent to a 6th grade warrior, while Yuan Ju was only at the peak of the 7th grade. It was obviously impossible for him to defeat Xiao Yuan. The reason why the battle was so intense now was simply because Xiao Yuan did not want to get hurt and chose to attack Yuan Ju as harmlessly as possible. Masterly, County Magistrate Su Chen Dao looked at the other two battlefields and asked, "Do you need any help?" "Need not." Li Hu and Su Jiwen gave the same answer. As the Yuan family warriors fell one after another, Yuan Long and Yuan Xiong became more and more anxious, and their attacks became more and more intense. Naturally, there were more and more flaws in their moves. Li Hu and Su Jiwen both knew that it was only a matter of time before they defeated these two people. Ugh. After receiving the answer from the two, Chen Dao nodded, and then he stopped interfering and stood aside, quietly observing the three battlefields. Oh my! A black shadow passed by Yuan Ju's side. Yuan Ju, who was concentrating on waiting, only felt a pain in his waist and immediately realized that he was injured. Damn it, why is this beast so difficult to deal with? Yuan Ju didn't even dare to look at his wound, letting it bleed. He opened his eyes as wide as he could and locked on a Xiao Yuan's position through the sounds he heard with his eyes and ears. Here! Yuan Ju suddenly jumped up and punched the air on the left, and at the same time, Xiao Yuan's figure appeared exactly where his fist landed. Oh my! Xiao Yuan obviously didn't expect Yuan Ju to be able to predict her position. She was caught off guard and hit by Yuan Ju's fist. Her small body flew backwards in an instant. But when Yuan Ju saw Xiao Yuan flying backwards, there was no joy on his face. It was true that his fist had hit Xiao Yuan, but the moment the fist touched Xiao Yuan, he felt a soft feeling on the surface of his fist, as if hitting a ball of light cotton. Oh my! As expected, after being punched by Yuan Ju, Xiao Yuan flipped in the air and landed lightly on the ground. There was no visible injury on his body, but a rare hint of anger appeared in his watery eyes. Obviously, Yuan Ju's attack made Xiao Yuan a little angry. Oh my! The next moment, Xiao Yuan disappeared from the spot, bursting out at an even faster speed, and turned into a shadow in Yuan Ju's sight. It's getting faster. Yuan Ju's heart skipped a beat, and before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his back. The intense pain made Yuan Ju gasp. He knew without even looking that his back was covered in wounds. However, after successfully attacking, Xiao Yuan showed no intention of stopping. Puff! The sound of sharp claws scratching flesh was heard, and another bloody wound appeared on Yuan Ju's thigh. Puff! 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 A series of harsh sounds rang in Yuan Ju's ears, and soon, Yuan Ju became a bloody man, with wounds all over his body made by small circles, and there was not a single piece of intact skin and flesh to be found. Yuan Ju looked at the wounds all over his body with a miserable expression, and despair was already in his heart. Possessing the strength of the peak 7th rank, he has always regarded himself as the #1 warrior in Taiping County, and believes that there is no other opponent in the entire Taiping County who can compete with him. But in front of this cat-like little beast, he was so powerless. His attacks couldn't hit the little beast at all. Even if he could hit it through prediction, the damage he could cause to the little beast would be negligible. In front of the little beast, all he could do was passively take the beating. "Who are you?" Yuan Ju stared at Chen Dao not far away and asked in a hoarse voice. He could already foresee the fall of the Yuan family. The 8th and 9th rank warriors of the Yuan family had all been killed. After Yuan Ju, fell, the 7th rank warriors would undoubtedly be slaughtered as well. The demise of the Yuan family was almost a foregone conclusion. The reason why the Yuan family fell was not because of Su Jiwen, nor because of Li Hu, but because of the young man who suddenly appeared in front of him. At this moment, Yuan Ju just wanted to know who this young man who suddenly appeared was, and why he was so powerful, and the little beast he carried with him was so terrifying. You don't need to know that. Chen Dao smiled faintly, without any intention of answering Yuan Ju's doubts. Don't you need to know? Aha. Yuan Ju smiled miserably and took his last breath. His neck had been cut by Xiao Yuan a long time ago. He was just holding on, forcing himself to take a deep breath when he asked the question just now. Bang! Yuan Ju's body fell to the ground, splashing some dust. The man in charge of Taiping County and the head of the Yuan family, who had been in charge of the Yuan family for nearly 20 years, finally came to the end of his life. Master! Yuan Long and Yuan Xiong screamed miserably, feeling heartbroken. Yuan Ju, who was at the peak of the 7th rank, was the pillar of the Yuan family. Yuan Ju's fall at this moment undoubtedly meant that the pillar of the Yuan family had fallen, which was something that Yuan Long and the others could not accept. How dare you get distracted while fighting me? Taking advantage of Yuan Long's grief, Su Jiwen punched Yuan Long straight in the throat. Crack! Yuan Long's larynx was broken by a punch before he could react in time. He let out a hoarse sound unwillingly from his throat and fell to the ground. On the other side, Li Hu did not miss the rare opportunity. Taking advantage of Yuan Xiong's grief, he grabbed Yuan Xiong's throat with his 5 fingers, and the power of his arms burst out, directly crushing Yuan Xiong's larynx. Well, at the last moment of his life, Yuan Xiong was still looking at Yuan Ju's corpse with unwillingness in his eyes. As the most powerful family in Taiping County, every member of the Yuan family has a strong sense of belonging to this family. Even a 7th-rank warrior like Yuan Xiong is no exception. He has always been proud of his identity as a member of a Yuan family. But at this moment, the Yuan family that made him proud was about to collapse. All the warriors in the clan were slaughtered, and only the elderly, the weak, women, children, and some ordinary clan members were left in the Yuan family. It was impossible for them to resist Su Jiwen and others. The only outcome awaiting the Yuan family is likely annihilation. Master Li, Yuan Xiong said to Li Hu with a weak breath, "Can you spare the ordinary members of the Yuan family? They pose no threat to you." "That's not for me to decide." Li Hu did not give a definite answer. The matter of eradicating the Yuan family was led by Chun Dao and Su Jiwen. He was just a thug and could not make decisions for Chun Dao and Su Jiwen. Hearing this, Yuan Xiong turned his head with difficulty and looked at Su Jiwen. But Su Jiwen didn't give him an answer, just looked at him quietly. "Oh." Yuan Xiong laughed at himself, already knowing the answer in his heart. Then the last bit of strength left his body, and he fell to the cold ground. At this point, the 3 7th-grade warriors and the rest of the 8th and 9th-grade warriors of the Yuan family were all dead. Chapter 197, Aiding and Abetting Evil, is unforgivable. In front of the Yuan family's gate, blood gathered into small streams, and the stone brick ground was covered with a deep red color. Chun Dao avoided the blood on the ground, approached Su Jiwen, and asked, "All the warriors of the Yuan family are dead. What does County Magistrate Su plan to do next?" "Of course we have to go into the Yuan family and search it." Su Jiwen stroked his beard and walked into the Yuan family first. Li Hu, Chun Dao, and Chen Cheng followed. The first thing Chun Dao felt when he walked through the gate and entered Yuan's house was silence. There was no one in the front yard or hall of Yuan's house. Of course, it is impossible that the Yuan family only has those warriors killed by Chun Dao and others. There should be many people hiding in the backyard. Su Jiwen also knew this, so he didn't stay in the front yard for too long and went straight to the backyard. When he entered the backyard, Su Jiwen saw a group of women. All of them were dressed brightly and were obviously the daughters of the Yuan family. In addition, there were also many maids and servants. Of course, in addition to women, there are also many men, including the housekeeper Yuan Fu, as well as the descendants of Yuan Ju, Yuan Long, Yuan Xiong, and others. At this time, these women and men huddled together, looking at Su Jiwen, who walked in with fear on their faces. They already knew what happened in front of their house, and they also knew that all the warriors of the Yuan family had died. At this moment, the victorious Su Jiwen and his companions would be the ones who decided their fate. This Yuan Ju is really lucky. Chun Dao, who followed Su Jiwen into the backyard, couldn't help but sneer. Among the women in the backyard, there were at least a dozen women who still had charm. Chun Dao guessed that they should be Yuan Ju's wives and concubines. In addition, there were many beautiful young women. Judging from their gorgeous clothes, their status in the Yuan family must be not low. They might also be Yuan Ju's concubines. The Yuan family has always been full of perverts. Su Jiwen also scoffed that Yuan Yong is lustful and loves women. Yuan Ju is no less so. He has at least a dozen wives and concubines at home, and more than 20 children. He can't even conceive a pig. Listening to the 2 men's ridicule of Yuan Ju, the people in the backyard didn't dare to say a word. They just looked at Su Jiwen with fear, waiting for Su Jiwen to decide their fate. After mocking Yuan Ju for a while, Su Jiwen looked at Chun Dao and asked tentatively, "Young friend Chun, what do you think should be done with these women?" Hearing this, Chun Dao fell into deep thought. To be fair, he didn't like killing people. The reason he went to the Yuan family was because they threatened his life and property. But these women and underage men of the Yuan family, they posed no threat to him, and Chun Dao would feel somewhat reluctant to kill them all. Bang, bang, bang. Just as Chun Dao was was hesitating. A sound came from a room on the side. "Brother Chung, go and take a look." Chun Dao motioned to Chun Chung to go over and take a look. Chun Chung did not suspect anything and walked straight to the door and kicked it open. As the door collapsed with a loud bang, the scene inside the room immediately stunned Chun Dao, Su Jiwen, Li Hu, and Chun Chung. But inside the room, there were women lying in all directions. Some of these women were half-dressed, while some were not wearing any clothes at all. Each of them had more or less wounds on their bodies, which was shocking. "Sir, save us." A woman rushed out of the door, knelt in front of Chun Chung, and begged repeatedly, "Please, save us." Looking at the woman in front of him who was covered in bruises, Chun Cheng's pupils trembled and he was speechless for a moment. Chun Dao walked up to the woman with a grim expression, helped her up, and asked, "Who are you?" "We are refugees from Liangzhou." As if reminded of sad memories, the woman said tearfully, "We originally thought we could have a good life after fleeing to Taiping County, but we never thought that in Taiping County we would have to face such a thing." As the women slowly arrived, Chun Dao and others finally understood their experiences. These women, like the refugees outside the city, had all fled from Liangzhou. They had originally thought they would have a good meal once they arrived in Taiping County, but they had never imagined. After arriving, what greeted them was hell. When they arrived outside Taiping County, the first person they met was the housekeeper of a Yuan family who was recruiting servants. For refugees, becoming a servant of a wealthy family was not something difficult to accept. So many people were tempted and wanted to become servants of the Yuan family. But what surprised these refugees was that the Yuan family only recruited women, and only young women at that. At first, the refugees didn't think much about it, and just thought that the Yuan family was short of maids. So a large number of young women became servants of the Yuan family, thinking that by becoming a maid of the Yuan family, they could at least have enough food to eat. But what happened next was completely contrary to their imagination. When they came to Yuan's house, what they needed to do was not the work of a maid, but the work of a prostitute in a brothel. Yes, the Yuan family recruited them just to allow the men of the Yuan family to vent their desires. And it was not just an ordinary way of venting desires, but venting them by destroying their bodies. While venting their lust, the men of the Yuan family would also use tools like whips and sticks to torture their bodies to vent their beastly nature. Over the past period of time, these women have been subjected to severe torture, with new wounds appearing on their bodies every day, and even some women were weak and were tortured to death in this room. After listening to the woman's story, Chun Dao's face looked extremely ugly. Even Su Jiwen, Li Hu, and Chun Chung looked so gloomy that they seemed to be dripping with water. The Yuan family's behavior has gone beyond the scope of being human and is no different from that of animals. The refugees outside the city were miserable enough, but they also deceived the women among the refugees and imprisoned them in their homes for their own sexual pleasure. Su Jiwen turned to look at the housekeeper Yuan Fu, his eyes full of murderous intent. "You did this, didn't you?" Su Jiwen knew very well that Yuan Fu was the steward of the entire Yuan Fu family, and things like purchasing servants were always done by Yuan Fu. "Master Su." Su Fu quickly knelt on his knees and said in panic, "This is what the master of the family told me to do. I have never touched these women before." Yuan Fu is nearly 70 years old, and his teeth are almost falling out. How can he have the energy to do such lewd things? In fact, these women are mostly for the pleasure of the warriors of the Yuan family. As for Yuan Fu, even if he wanted to, he would be powerless. Yeah. Su Jiwen had no intention of listening to Yuan Fu's explanation and directly grabbed Yuan Fu's neck. Even if you have never touched him, those who aid and abet the evil will still be unforgivable. Snap! As soon as Su Jiwen exerted force, Yuan Fu's neck was immediately broken. After his head tilted, he completely stopped breathing. Chapter 198, Deserve Death. After twisting Yuan Fu's neck, Su Jiwen's sharp eyes swept over all the Yuan family members in the backyard. Anyone who met Su Jiwen's gaze lowered their head, fearing that Su Jiwen would notice them. Chun Dao walked into the room where the woman was imprisoned. The floor of the room was covered with carpet, which was both beautiful and soft. However, Chun Dao had no time to pay attention to this. He just looked at the woman in the room with a dark face. Each of these women bore numerous scars. Some had whip marks, others had bruises all over their skin, and even traces of blood could be seen on the ground. In the corner of the room, there were two women who had already died. It is hard to imagine what kind of torture these women have suffered. Chen Dao took a deep breath and looked at the woman following behind him. What's your name? Benefactor, my name is Zhang Li Mei. The woman quickly replied. Do you know them all? Chen Dao pointed at the women who were either lying on the ground with lifeless eyes or leaning against the wall, staring at him dully, and said that these women's eyes were full of numbness, without a trace of life, as if they had completely lost hope of living. I only got to know them after I came here. Zhang Li Mei replied, I fled here with my parents, but they died on the way, leaving me alone in Taiping County. As she spoke, a glint of light slipped from the corners of Zhang Li Mei's eyes, as if she was recalling the hardships of her escape. Her parents had died along the way, and she had barely reached Taiping County, relying on her younger physique and the meager rations her parents had left her. But who could have imagined that what greeted her was not the days of full meals she had imagined, but hellish torture? I see. Chen Dao exhaled, as if to expel some of the depression in his heart. He couldn't even bear to look at the women in the room. He walked out of the room and looked at the Yuan family. Su County Magistrate, I have figured out how to deal with them. Su Jiwen looked at Chen Dao and asked, what do you plan to do? The Yuan family deserves death. Chen Dao said slowly, kill all the men. Chen Dao originally didn't want to be a butcher, but the moment he learned about what happened to Zhang Li Mei and other women, Chen Dao could no longer suppress the murderous intent in his heart. Every member of the family that could do such evil things worse than those of animals deserves to die. As for the women, Chen Dao paused and said, let County Magistrate Su handle the woman. After all, Chen Dao was not a murderer. Killing all the men in the Yuan family was already the limit for him. He really couldn't bring himself to kill the remaining women, so he threw this difficult problem to Su Jiwen. Su Jiwen didn't have any objections. He and Chen Dao had similar ideas. When he learned about what had happened to Zhang Li Mei and other women, he had already made a similar decision in his heart. All the male members of the Yuan family must be killed. As for the women, although Chen Dao couldn't solve the problem, Su Jiwen had a way to deal with it. The government had the Jia Fangxi, and Su Jiwen could easily fill these women into the Jia Fangxi. As for whether this would be inappropriate, before seeing women like Zhang Li Mei, Su Jiwen might have felt some psychological burden, but at this moment, he no longer felt pity for these women of the Yuan family. They enjoyed the blessings of the Yuan family, so naturally they had to bear the consequences of the Yuan family. Upon hearing Chen Dao's decision, despair flashed across the faces of the Yuan family. Living in the Yuan family, they knew very well how vast the gap was between ordinary people and warriors, so they didn't dare to resist in the slightest. Failure to resist would mean, all males will be killed. This is obviously unacceptable to them. Then, a beautifully dressed woman stepped forward, looked directly at Su Jiwen, and said, Su County Magistrate, you are also a local official. How could you do such a thing that would infuriate heaven and man? Dozens of young males from my Yuan family were slaughtered. How could you have the heart to do that? Hearing this, Su Jiwen glanced at the woman and asked, are you Yuan Ju's wife? The status of the legal wife in the Xia Kingdom was still very high. Yuan Ju would occasionally bring his wife to attend some occasions in the past, so Su Jiwen recognized the identity of this person at a glance. It was Yuan Ju's legal wife, Wu. Exactly. Wu looked directly into Su Jiwen's eyes and said, if County Magistrate Su is willing to let us go, I am willing to offer all the wealth of the Yuan family to you. The Yuan family's wealth? Su Jiwen smiled. You don't need to offer it to me. I will take it myself. After saying this, Su Jiwen continued, as for your question about whether I would feel sorry for them, there were many young women locked up in the house. When your Yuan family abused them, did you ever feel any compassion? Mrs. Wu opened her mouth, speechless. As the mistress of the Yuan family, she certainly knew about the affairs of those women, but she never took it to heart. Because in her opinion, those women recruited from the refugees were nothing more than untouchables, and it was their honor to serve the men of the Yuan family. But Wu never expected that Su Jiwen would actually plan to slaughter the entire Yuan family because of this incident. At this time, Wu couldn't help but feel a little regretful. She regretted not stopping the men in the clan from humiliating those women. But now, it was too late to say anything. At this time, Zhang had already led the county police chief to the backyard and said to Su Jiwen, County Master, please give your instructions. Kill all the men, Su Jiwen said without hesitation. As for the women, send them all to the Jia Fangxi. Yes, Zhang Hai waved his hand after receiving the order, and the detectives who came with him immediately took action and started a massacre in the backyard of the Yuan family. There were endless screams, and soon the ground was covered in blood. Dozens of men in the Yuan family were killed, and all of them were beheaded on the spot. As for the women, they also wanted to resist, and even stepped forward to stop Zhang He and others from slaughtering them. But Zhang He and others were not polite to them at all. They either slapped the women or knocked them down with the back of their knives, and continued to kill. At this moment, the entire backyard of the Yuan family looked like it was paved with blood, and the blue bricks on the ground were dyed blood red. After killing all the men in the Yuan family, Zhang He ordered his men to tie up all the women in the Yuan family. He then walked over to Su Jiwen and reported, "County Master, all 31 men in the Yuan family have been killed, and the women have all been tied up." As he spoke, a trace of trance flashed in Zhang He's eyes. Even he, who came from Liangzhou to survive, had heard of the reputation of the Yuan family. But who could have imagined that the Yuan family, the most prominent family in the entire Taiping County, would allow themselves to be slaughtered like lambs to be slaughtered at this moment? Chapter 199: The World Changes. Su Jiwen nodded and ordered, "Go to the Yuan family's warehouse and take away all the money and grain." After saying this, Su Jiwen turned to Chen Dao and said, "My dear Chun, I've already arranged for people to go get the supplies from the Yuan family shop in the city. I'm sure you'll get your share." Chen Dao nodded gently and pointed at Zhang Li Mei and asked, "How does the county magistrate plan to accommodate these women?" Hearing this, Su Jiwen couldn't help but frown. Women like Zhang Li Mei had already lost their innocence. Of course, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was, many of them may have lost the desire to live, which is a bit difficult to deal with. Su Jiwen is not a psychologist, so he has no way to guide these women out of their shadows. "I will support them." After a long pause, Su Jiwen said, "Until they return in normal." This is all Su Jiwen can do. Chen Dao also knew that this was the best outcome for these women, so he nodded and said, "Now that the Yuan family's affairs are concluded, I will be leaving now. County Magistrate, please don't forget my share of the benefits." "Don't worry, my friend Chen," Su Jiwen replied with a smile. "Once the Yuan family's wealth is fully counted, I will not forget your share." "That's good." Chen Dao nodded and took Chen Cheng away from the Yuan family. Su Jiwen and others behind him looked at Chen Dao's back with complicated expressions. Chen Dao was undoubtedly the one who contributed the most to the successful elimination of the Yuan family this time. Su Jiwen and Li Hu combined only managed to kill 2 7th-grade warriors from the Yuan family, and Chen Dao. Chen Dao single-handedly eliminated Yuan Zhu, the strongest man in the Yuan family. In addition, the other 8th and 9th rank warriors in the Yuan family were also killed by Chen Dao and Chen Dao's age. Su Jiwen, who had secretly investigated Chen Dao's information, knew very well that Chen Dao was only 15 years old. A 15-year-old boy, he possessed the strength of a 7th rank warrior, and he had a small beast that was equivalent to a 6th rank warrior following him. Su Jiwen felt that he was becoming increasingly confused about Chen Dao. He was clearly an ordinary farmer from Chenjia village, yet he made such rapid progress in martial arts, and even had a terrifying 6th-grade demon beast as his companion. Even his guards were 8th-grade warriors. And he was not just an ordinary 8th-grade warrior. Before, when he was outside the Yuan family's gate, Su Jiwen saw with his own eyes that Chen Cheng single-handedly stopped an 8th-grade and 3 7th-grade warriors without any injury. It is no exaggeration to say that even for a 7th-grade warrior, it would not be an easy task to defeat Chen Cheng. If Su Jiwen had not personally checked Chen Dao's information and learned that Chen Dao was a son of a wealthy family in the county town, he probably would not have doubted it. This little friend Chen is really not simple. Su Jiwen's eyes were dim, and he felt that Chen Dao seemed to be shrouded in a layer of fog, making it impossible for him to see his specific appearance clearly. Taiwan Restaurant. The restaurant owner, who was directing the waiters to clean up the bloodstains, looked at Chen Dao and Chen Cheng, who were slowly approaching, and his heart and eyelids jumped. The bloody battle that took place in the restaurant during the day is still vivid in my mind. Therefore, the shopkeeper who saw Chen Dao coming did not hesitate at all. He forced a smile and stepped forward to greet him, saying, "Sir, welcome back." The shopkeeper originally thought that Chen Dao would never come back after leaving, but he never expected that. This murderer not only came back, but also had a strong smell of blood on his body. Obviously, this murderer had probably killed a lot of people again. As for who he killed, the shopkeeper had some guesses, most likely someone from the Yuan family, etc. The shopkeeper was suddenly stunned. Su Jiwen and the young man had left a deal with the Yuan family. Now that the young man had returned safely, didn't that mean? Is it very likely that the Yuan family has been destroyed? Hiss. The shopkeeper secretly took a deep breath. Taiping County might be about to change. Chen Dao nodded and said, "Is my room still available?" I'm keeping it. The shopkeeper nodded hurriedly. Although he had previously guessed that Chen Dao would most likely not come back, he did not dare to touch Chen Dao's room. This was a ruthless man who dared to kill the eldest son of the Yuan family. If he touched his room, if he came back, the shopkeeper did not dare to think about what would happen to him. Good. Chen Dao didn't say much to Manager Yu, and directly took Chen Cheng to the room on the second floor. Not long after, the waiter from the restaurant brought hot water. After the two of them simply wiped their bodies with the hot water, they lay down on the bed. Chen Daoping lay on the big bed, looking at the ceiling, many thoughts flashing through his mind. Before traveling through time, whenever Chen Dao read history books, he would always find that feudal society was described as a cannibalistic society. In the past, Chen Dao did not quite understand this description, but now he has a deeper understanding of it. The experiences of women like Zhang Li Mei truly reflect the sorrow of the working people of this era. They were locked up in the house and suffered humiliation, but no one could do anything for them, and no one even cared about their life or death. If Chen Dao and Su Jiwen hadn't just happened to break into the Su family, Zhang Li Mei and the others would have been tortured to death. This world, alas. Chen Dao sighed and stopped thinking about it, because thinking about it would only add to his troubles. Although he now has some ability to protect himself, looking at the entire Xia country, Chen Dao can only be regarded as an ordinary person with a little wealth and has no ability to change the world. Fuhu Boxing Gym. Just as Chen Dao lay down, Li Hu and Su Jiwen also came here under the moonlight. As soon as the two returned to the backyard, Li Ying placed the dishes on the stone table and said to them with a smile, "Dad, County Master, the red blood chicken is ready." Hearing this, they both looked at the plate of chicken on the stone table. The chicken was fried in lard, and it was fragrant, golden in color with a hint of red, which was really tempting. In addition to the chicken, there was a bowl of chicken blood on the table, as well as some wild vegetables and staple foods. "Thank you for your hard work, Xiaoying," Su Jiwen said to Li Ying with a smile. Li Ying waved his hand, indicating that there was no need to be polite, and then asked, "Dad, did your trip to the Yuan family go smoothly?" "It went pretty smoothly," Li Hu said without hesitation. "All the warriors of the Yuan family have been killed. Now the people arranged by the county magistrate are counting the supplies of the Yuan family. All dead." A hint of surprise flashed in Li Ying's eyes. The Yuan family had a large number of warriors, and Li Hu and Su Jiwen left home at noon. Up to this moment, the two had only been away for one afternoon. How could they have killed all the warriors of the Yuan family? All dead. Li Hu nodded seriously. Most of them were killed by Chen Xiaoyu. Chen Xiaoyu alone killed more than a dozen warriors of the Yuan family. Even the head of the Yuan family was killed by Chen Xiaoyu himself. Chen Dao is so powerful. Li Ying was even more surprised, but when he thought that Chen Dao's kitten-like pet could easily defeat his father, Li Ying felt relieved. With that pet around, there won't be any accidents in the Yuan family as long as there are no warriors above the 7th rank. Chapter 200 Ambition. Young friend Chen is indeed very capable. Li Hu nodded and said, "Brother Su, try this red-blooded chicken and see if it's as effective against the 7th rank warrior, as young friend Chen said." Good. Su Jiwen didn't hesitate. He picked up the chopsticks, put a piece of golden fried chicken into his mouth, and chewed it gently. As soon as the chicken entered his mouth, the aroma of meat mixed with oil spread in his mouth. Su Jiwen couldn't help but squint his eyes, speed up his chewing, and then swallow the chicken into his stomach. "Ow!" Li Hu looked at Li Hu curiously. He did not doubt Chen Dao's credibility. Chen Dao said that this red-blooded chicken was effective for 7th grade warriors, so there was a high probability that it was really effective. However, before he personally understood it, Li Hu couldn't help but feel a little unsure. After all, medicinal herbs that were effective for 7th grade warriors were too rare in Taiping County. Effect. Su Jiwen carefully felt the internal conditions of his body, his eyes lighting up. Not bad. This chicken may not be a strong influence, but it has a subtle, gentle effect. I can feel the chi and blood in my body becoming a little restless. The agitation of chi and blood means that the power of chi and blood is growing, which also means the chicken of this red-blooded chicken is indeed effective for 7th grade warriors, but the effect is not that obvious, or it can be said that it is a more gradual nourishment. Brother Su, why not try this chicken blood again? Li Hu pointed at the chicken blood on the table and said that as someone who had eaten a lot of blood-feathered chickens, he knew very well that the chicken blood from the chickens brought by Chun Dao would often have a more potent effect. Ugh! Su Jiwen picked up the bowl on the table and drank 1/3 of the chicken blood in the bowl in one gulp. As soon as the chicken blood entered his stomach, Su Jiwen's face turned red immediately. He felt as if the blood in his body was boiling violently. Even the skin hidden under his clothes was turning red. In the cold weather, he felt extremely hot all over. The effect of this chicken blood is so strong. Su Jiwen couldn't help but stand up, took a stance in the backyard, and started practicing the sudden rain fist that he had practiced. The sudden rain fist, as its name suggests, is like a sudden downpour with dense and continuous movements, completely different from the crane tiger fist's wide and open moves. Call! About a quarter of an hour later, Su Jiwen put away his fists and feet and exhaled a puff of white mist. The effect of this chicken blood is truly magical. After carefully considering his own situation, Su Jiwen said with a hint of excitement, "Just one mouthful of chicken blood has significantly increased my chi and blood power." At this moment, Su Jiwen was extremely excited. Ever since he was promoted to the 7th rank, his martial arts had stagnated. Even though he practiced the sudden rain fist diligently every day, his progress was quite limited. This was a problem that most martial artists had to face. If they wanted to make rapid progress in martial arts, they must have enough medicinal herbs to assist them. However, the medicinal herbs needed by a 7th grade warrior are basically impossible to buy in a small place like Taiping County. Even if Su Jiwen could send people to the county town to buy them, the price would be beyond Su Jiwen's afford. After all, he is not a corrupt official who is greedy for money. His own wealth is not enough to afford the high price of medicinal herbs for a 7th grade warrior. It was precisely because of this that Su Jiwen had not felt any progress in his martial arts for a long time, since he was promoted to the 7th rank. He was extremely surprised to see the sudden improvement at this moment. The effect is so good. Li Hu's eyes also lit up. His situation was similar to Su Jiwen's. After being promoted to the 7th rank, the increase in chi and blood brought about by daily boxing practice had become very weak or even non-existent. Therefore, when Li Hu heard Su Jiwen's high evaluation of chicken blood, he couldn't help but get excited. The blood of the red-blooded chicken is so effective, which means Li Hu's martial arts journey will not end, but will continue to move forward. It's better than I expected. Su Jiwen nodded seriously and said, "This young friend, Chun, is truly an extraordinary person. With this red-blood chicken, maybe we could become a peak 7th grade warrior like Yuan Ju. Even a 6th grade warrior is not an extravagant hope." Su Jiwen's eyes were burning with passion. The Xia Kingdom respected martial arts, and every Xia citizen was extremely passionate about martial arts. Even the scholar officials were no exception. Therefore, the moment Su Jiwen realized that he had the potential to become a 6th rank warrior, he was extremely excited. 6th rank. Li Hu's eyes shone brightly, but soon, the light gradually dimmed. Becoming a 6th rank warrior is no easy task. To become a 6th grade warrior, one not only needs to reach the peak of the 7th grade, but also needs a higher level of martial arts. Whether it was Li Hu's family martial arts, the subduing tiger fist, or Su Jiwen's sudden rain fist, they were both low-grade martial arts that could only be cultivated to the peak of the 7th rank. As for the 6th rank, a 6th grade warrior needs to generate energy in his body, but low-grade martial arts cannot generate energy from the blood and chi in the body, so he must learn martial arts of the middle grade or above. However, mid-level martial arts cannot be found in Taiping County. Brother Li, there's no need to be discouraged. Su Jiwen smiled and said, "We don't have any mid-grade martial arts right now, but that may not be the case in the future. Tomorrow I will send people to the county city to search for as many mid-grade martial arts as possible. As long as we find them, promotion to the 6th rank will be just around the corner." The existence of the red-blood chicken has paved the way for the two of them to reach the peak of the 7th rank. They only need to obtain mid-grade martial arts, and becoming a 6th grade warrior is only a matter of time. And the 6th rank warrior, even in the entire Xia country, they are absolutely the backbone of the force. Then I'll take advantage of Brother Su's good words. A gleam of light also flashed in Li Hu's eyes. He was also a man with ambitions in martial arts. In the past, due to limited resources, he had to hide his ambitions. And now, with the red blood chicken, Li Hu might be able to go one step further and touch the 6th level realm that he had never dared to dream of before. The next day, Chen Dao woke up as soon as the sun rose. After having breakfast with Chun Sheng in the lobby of Taiwan restaurant, he left the hotel and headed to the Fuhu boxing gym. It is worth mentioning that when Chen Dao was having breakfast, many guests and the owner of the restaurant frequently looked at him and Chun Sheng, as if they were looking at some rare species. All the guests who looked at Chen Dao and Chun Sheng were the ones who witnessed the bloody scene yesterday. Of course, what shocked them even more was what Chen Dao did afterwards. Last night, the news of the extermination of the Yuan family had spread throughout Taiping County. For ordinary people, this news was just a topic of conversation after dinner and would not affect their lives. There were even many people who had been oppressed by the Yuan family applauded. But in the upper circles of Taiping County, this news undoubtedly caused a turmoil comparable to an 18-magnitude earthquake. The Yuan family had been established in Taiping County for 100 years, and had always been the most powerful and influential family in the county. But now, their entire clan had been wiped out,